welcome back to everyone who makes this channel part of their nightly routine. Tonight's video brings you scary stories from abandoned places and lost locations, told slowly to calm the mind. If you enjoy listening, please like, subscribe, and comment where you're tuning in from. Relax and enjoy. Story 1. The abandoned zoo wasn't empty. Something still watches. From the cages. Leo's obsession with the Holloway menagerie started with a blurry photograph on a defunct paranormal forum. It showed a rusted giraffe enclosure, overgrown with kudzu, and in the far corner, barely visible through the foliage, 2 points of dull red light hovering at chest height. No caption. Just the file name, Holloway Eyes 1998 JPG. Leo, chasing viral fame for his Dying Forgotten America YouTube channel after his divorce bled him dry, saw it as a sign. "Dude, this is it," he'd said, shoving his phone in my face over lukewarm coffee in our cramped apartment. Shut down overnight in '98 after unexplained incidents, no records, no bodies, just gone. We get dawn footage, capture those lights, blow up the algorithm. His eyes held that familiar reckless glint, the one that had led us to Willow Creek Lodge and the concrete tunnels. I should have refused, but my own bank account was a ghost town, and the memory of rent collectors pounding on our door was fresh. The Holloway wasn't in the Catskills or Maine. It was barely an hour outside Pittsburgh, rotting concrete and rusted bars swallowed by the reclaimed wilderness of the Rust Belt. We packed protein bars, water, Leo's drone, and my old mag light, its batteries crackling with age. No permissions, no backup. Just coordinates scribbled on a napkin from a truck stop waitress who'd muttered, "Place eats people, honey, always has." The drive ended at a chain-link fence choked with poison ivy and decades of neglect. The entrance arch, once proud with flake and paint reading "Holloway Menagerie, see the world's wonders," sagged violently, one side buried under a fallen oak. Beyond it, the path was a tunnel of skeletal branches and thigh-high weeds. The air hung thick and still, smelling of wet earth, decay, and an underlying sweetness like overripe fruit left in a damp basement. No bird song, no insects, just the crunch of our boots on broken asphalt and the low thrum of Leo's drone controller as he powered it up. "Signal's already dropping," he muttered, his voice tight. "Place is dead. Perfect." He launched the drone. It buzzed upward, its camera feed showing us a nightmare landscape from above, enclosures overgrown with invasive vines, collapsed aviaries like broken rib cages, the skeletal frames of roller coasters and ticket booths consumed by moss. Then, over the old primate house, the feed dissolved into static. Leo cursed, forcing a manual landing. The drone thudded into the mud 50 yards ahead, its whirring dying abruptly. Great. Just great. He slung his camera bag higher. "We walk?" The silence deepened as we passed the first exhibits. The reptile house was a tomb of shattered glass and spilled sand, the air inside unnaturally cold and reeking of ammonia and something vaguely reptilian. The big cat grottos were worse. Massive concrete pits, separated by rusted bars thicker than my wrist, were filled with stagnant, algae-scummed water. Scratches marred the walls, not claw marks, but deep, deliberate gouges in the concrete itself, as if made by tools or something with immense strength. On the walkway between the lion and tiger enclosures, half buried in mud, lay a child's sneaker. Bright red, impossibly clean. Leo snapped a photo. "Gold," he whispered, but his hands were shaking. The sun, weak behind the gray clouds, dipped lower, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to cling to the rusted bars like grasping fingers. Near the aviary ruins, I found the first sign that the holloway wasn't abandoned. Fresh footprints, not ours, larger, deeper, leading away from a drainage grate crusted with green slime. They vanished into the dense thicket surrounding the old bear pits. "Probably just kids," Leo said, too loudly, his voice echoing unnaturally in the stillness. "Urban explorers like us." But his eyes darted to the shadows between the rusted bars. The air grew colder, the sweet rot smell intensified, and beneath it, a new odor, wet fur and old blood. We reached the heart of the zoo, the large predator enclosure, a moat, long, dry, and filled with trash, surrounded a central island fortress of concrete and steel bars. The sign, hanging by one rusted chain, read, "Wolves and hyenas do not feed." The bars were bent inward at the top, twisted like tinsel. Inside, the concrete floor was scarred with deep, parallel grooves, and in the center a pile of bones. Not deer or rabbit, human-sized, rib cages, skulls, cleaned white and gleaming in the weak light. Scattered among them were shards of glass from phone screens, a rusted watch, a single, muddy work boot. Leo's camera clicked, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. This isn't right," he breathed, his earlier bravado gone. "The record said no bodies, just disappearances." That's when the whispers started, not from one direction, but from everywhere. From the rusted bars themselves, a dry, papery rustling, like dead leaves skittering on stone, forming words just below comprehension. "Hungry? So long? New meat?" The subsonic hum began, a vibration in the concrete under our feet, in the marrow of my bones. The same signature of wrongness I'd felt in the lodge and the tunnel. Leo dropped his camera. "Did you hear that?" He whirled, scanning the empty enclosures. The shadows between the bars seemed to deepen, coalescing into shapes that weren't quite animals, weren't quite human. Hunched figures with two long limbs, their outlines blurred as if seen through heat haze. Eyes glowed, a dull, unwavering red reflecting the dying light. Dozens of them, watching from every cage, from the reptile house, from the collapsed roof of the primate habitat, not moving, just watching, waiting. "Run!" I screamed. We bolted back the way we came, crashing through the undergrowth, thorns tearing at our clothes. The whispers rose to a chorus, becoming clearer, hungrier. "Stay, feed us, join the pack." The hum surged, vibrating the ground, making my teeth ache. Behind us, the dry rustling became a scrabbling sound, claws on concrete dragging through mud, fast, gaining. We reached the main path near the reptile house. Leo's abandoned drone lay where it fell. He skidded to a halt, grabbing it. "The footage! We need proof!" He fumbled with the controller. The drone's lights flickered on. The camera feed stuttered to life on his phone screen, not static. The image showed the predator enclosure behind us, and filling the frame, spilling over the bent bars, were the shapes, not wolves, not hyenas, things of matted fur and exposed bone, their limbs elongated and jointed wrong, their mouths too wide, filled with needle teeth. Their eyes blazed red, and they were running, not on all fours, upright, like men, but faster, much faster. Leo's scream was cut short as something heavy slammed into him from the side. I turned, a creature taller than Leo, its body a patchwork of mangy gray fur and weeping sores, had him pinned against the rusted reptile house gate, its jaw unhinged with a wet crack, revealing rows of teeth like shards of broken glass. Leo thrashed, beating at its chest with his fists. It didn't flinch. Its red eyes fixed on me, unblinking. More shapes emerged from the shadows of the aviary ruins, from behind the ticket booth. Hunched, silent, watching. The whispers became a roar in my head. Mine! Pack! I raised my maglite, not to see, to fight. I smashed the heavy metal casing against the creature's skull. It shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and recoiled, releasing Leo. He scrambled back, coughing blood. "Go!" he choked. "Get help!" He shoved his phone into my hands. The drone feed still showed the clearing. It was filling with them. Dozens, hundreds, a seething mass of fur, bone, and burning red eyes. They weren't chasing me. They were herding Leo towards the moat surrounding the predator island. His face was white with terror. "The bars!" he yelled. "They're not to keep them in. They're to keep us out until they're ready." Understanding crashed over me. The Holloway menagerie wasn't shut down because animals escaped. It was shut down because the animals changed. Or something else moved in. The unexplained incidents weren't attacks. They were feedings. The zoo wasn't abandoned. It was a larder. And we were the delivery. I ran. Not towards the exit. Towards the administrative building, a crumbling brick structure half swallowed by kudzu. Leo's scream followed me, a raw animal sound of pure terror, abruptly cut off by a wet, tearing noise and a chorus of high-pitched chitters that echoed through the trees. I didn't look back. I burst through the shattered glass doors of the admin building, slamming them shut behind me, wedging a fallen filing cabinet against the handle. The interior was a tomb of dust and decay. Desks overturned, rusted typewriters, filing cabinets spilling mildewed papers. The air reeked of mold and that same sweet rot stench. I fumbled with Leo's phone. No signal. The drone feed was gone, replaced by static. But the last image was burned into my mind. Leo being dragged, screaming, towards the central island by three of the creatures. Their red eyes had locked onto the camera one last time. Not with hunger, with satisfaction. They knew I'd seen. They knew I'd run. And they knew I'd come back. The whispers seeped under the door, through the cracks in the walls. He runs. He tells. He returns. I found the office marked Director. Inside, a massive oak desk dominated the room. On it lay a ledger, its leather cover cracked and stiff. My hands trembling, I opened it. The entries were meticulous, detailing animal acquisitions, feed costs, staff wages, until October 31st, 1998. The final entry, in a shaky hand, read, "Specimens exhibiting unnatural growth, aggression beyond containment parameters, eyes wrong color, staff missing, visitors disappearing. They watch from the cages, always watching. God help us. They hunger for more than meat. They hunger for names. Shutting down, sealing gates. May God have mercy on anyone who opens them again." Below it, the page was blank until the very bottom. In fresh, dark ink that glistened like wet blood, 2 lines had been added. Leo Vance, Exhibit 7A, Wolves and Hyenas. Ben Carter, Exhibit 7B, Reserved. The whispers outside the door intensified, becoming a physical pressure against the wood. Scratching, not frantic. Patient, deliberate. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Like claws testing the grain. The red eyes glowed through the gaps in the boarded windows, dozens of them, unblinking, hungry. The hum vibrated the floorboards, rising in pitch, syncing with my own hammering heart. I backed away from the desk, pressing myself into a corner. My maglite beam swept the room, catching a framed photograph on the wall behind the director's chair. It showed the zoo in its prime, 1950s-era families smiling before the wolf enclosure, but the animals behind the bars, they weren't wolves. They were hunched, furless things with elongated limbs and faces stretched too wide, and their eyes, even in the faded black and white photo, glowed a faint, unnatural red. The director in the photo, a stern man with thinning hair, stood smiling beside them. His name tag read, Silas Thorne. Silas Thorne, the caretaker from Willow Creek Lodge. The name connected the dots with icy clarity. This wasn't just a zoo. It was a node, a feeding ground in a network of hungry places. Thorne hadn't been a caretaker. He'd been a keeper, a feeder. And the creatures, they weren't animals. They were something older, something that wore the skins of what it consumed, something that took your name and your shape, but left only hunger behind. The scratching at the door stopped. The whispers ceased. The sudden silence was worse, heavy, expectant. Then a new sound, a wet rattle and breath like lungs full of mud coming from directly outside the wedged door. A shadow, tall and impossibly thin, slid under the gap, stretching across the dusty floor towards me. It had too many joints. The breath came again, closer. The filing cabinet blocking the door groaned, metal screeching against concrete as an unseen force pushed against it. Panic, pure and blinding, seized me. I lunged for the window, a small, grimy pane overlooking the overgrown path to the exit. I smashed the glass with my maglite, ignoring the shards tearing my arms. I scrambled through, dropping into the mud outside. The whispers erupted behind me, a chorus of rage and triumph. Runs! Hunt! Name is known. I ran, not towards the exit arch, away from it, deeper into the zoo's overgrown heart, towards a ruined aviary. Branches whipped my face. Roots snagged my feet. The red eyes tracked me from every shadowed enclosure, shapes detached from the darkness, loping on all fours, their movement silent and unnaturally fast. The hum was inside my skull now, a physical pressure threatening to burst my eardrums. I reached the aviary, a skeletal dome of rusted iron struts and shattered glass. In the center stood the foundation of what was once a fountain. I dove behind it, pressing myself into the mud, covering my mouth to stifle my sobs. The creatures surrounded the fountain, not attacking, circling. Their red eyes glowed in the twilight, unblinking. Their breaths steamed in the cold air. They chittered softly to each other, a sound like stones grinding in a wet sack. One, larger than the others, with patches of mangy black fur and a jaw that hung loosely on broken hinges, stepped forward. It didn't look at me. It looked at the mud where I'd landed, at my footprints. It lowered its head and inhaled deeply, a wet, snuffling sound. Then it raised its head, those red eyes locking onto my hiding place. It didn't snarl, it smiled, a rictus grin splitting its face, revealing rows of needle teeth. It pointed a clawed finger not at me, but at the ground beside the fountain, where the mud was disturbed. Written in the wet earth, as if by an invisible hand, was a single word. Ben! The creature tilted its head, the smile widening. It took a step closer, then another. The others closed the circle. The whispers weren't in the air anymore. They were inside my head, clear and cold as ice. Ben Carter. Exhibit 7B, reserved, come home. Resistance was a distant memory. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was in my bones, leaching the warmth, the will. The hum wasn't just sound, it was the rhythm of the zoo itself, the pulse of the thing that lived in its concrete bones. Leo's final scream echoed in my mind, not as a warning, but as a welcome. The red eyes weren't terrifying. They were familiar, comforting. Like embers in a hearth, the creature with the broken jaw stopped inches away. It didn't grab me. It reached out a clawed hand, not to harm, but to guide. Its touch was cold, but the mud beneath me was warm, wet, fertile. The sweet rot smell was the scent of home, of belonging. My name was written in the earth. My place was reserved. The fear didn't vanish. It dissolved into the deep, seductive warmth of utter surrender. This wasn't death. It was promotion, from prey to keeper, from visitor to exhibit, from Ben Carter to something else, something that watched, something that waited, something that hungered. I took the creature's hand. Its grip was firm, cold, but not painful. It pulled me gently from the mud. The other creatures stepped back, bowing their distorted heads. The whispers became a chorus of contentment. Welcome, keeper. Name secured. Vigil begins. The red eyes glowed brighter, reflecting in the puddles at my feet. I looked down. My reflection in the murky water wasn't mine anymore. My eyes glowed dull red. My mouth stretched too wide. The mud on my shoes wasn't just earth. It was mixed with fine, dark fur, and written in the ripples around my reflection in letters that shimmered and dissolved. Exhibit 7B, Ben Carter, permanent resident. The creature led me away from the fountain, not towards the exit, but deeper into the ruins, towards the predator enclosure, towards Leo. The hum deepened, becoming the heartbeat of the Holloway menagerie. My heartbeat. The red eyes of the pack followed us, a sea of embers in the gathering dark. The zoo wasn't empty. It was full, and I was finally home. The cages were open, but I didn't need to leave. I was the watcher now, and the next visitor. Their name would be written in the mud. Soon, the whispers promised it. Hungry. So long. New meat. I smiled. My jaw cracked. The taste of copper filled my mouth. The hunt was over. The feeding had just begun. Forever. And this story ends here. The next one begins now. We found a cabin deep in the woods already set for dinner for 4. We shouldn't have taken the trail. That's the lie I tell myself now, to soften the guilt, to make the memory bearable. As if choice mattered, as if we hadn't been led. It started with the rain, not gentle, not stormy, a cold, clinging drizzle that seeped through jackets and turned the forest floor into a slick, sucking mire. We were 3 hours into the Blackroot Ridge loop, me, Cass, Theo, and Lena, when the trail markers vanished, not faded, not obscured by moss. Removed, nails pulled clean from the pines, metal tags gone, as if someone had walked ahead with pliers and a purpose. Lena was the first to notice the smell, not pine, not wet earth. Wood smoke, and beneath it, roast chicken, thyme, buttered carrots. The kind of smell that makes your stomach clench with primal aching hunger. We're off route, Cass said, wiping rain from her glasses. She checked her GPS. Signal's gone. Compass is spinning. Theo tapped his handheld anemometer. Wind's dead calm, but the smoke's coming from uphill, against the thermal. Lena, quiet, observant Lena, who'd been sketching fungi in her notebook all day, pointed. Through the dripping hemlocks, a light. Not a campfire, not a lantern, a window, warm, yellow, steady, And beyond it, the silhouette of a cabin, not dilapidated, not rustic chic. Maintained. Cedar shingles, recently oiled, a stone chimney exhaling a thin, straight plume of smoke. A gravel path, swept clean, leading to a red front door with a wreath of dried lavender and, oddly, juniper berries, their scent sharp and medicinal in the damp air. No tire tracks, no footprints in the mud, just the path. Dry. "We should keep moving," I said. "Find higher ground, build a lean-to." Lena stepped forward. "Someone's home. They'll let us dry off, just for an hour." Her voice wasn't pleadin', it was certain, like she'd been here before. We followed. The path crunched underfoot, not gravel, crushed bone, deer maybe, or something smaller, I didn't mention it. The door opened before we reached it, not violently, not creaking on rusted hinges, smoothly, as if oiled, as if expected. Warm air rushed out, wood smoke, roasting meat, the faint, sweet tang of fermenting apples. No one stood in the doorway, just an invitation. We stepped inside. The cabin was small, one room. A stone hearth dominated the far wall, fire crackling, casting long, dancing shadows. Rough-hewn beams overhead, a bearskin rug, real, the head still attached. Glass eyes, dull but watchful. In front of the fire and the table, center of the room, pine, worn smooth by time and use, set for 4, not hastily, not guest-ready. Family-ready, white linen napkins folded into swans, polished silverware, fork, knife, spoon, and a small shallow dish beside each plate, filled with coarse sea salt. 4 crystal water glasses, each with a single slice of lemon floating inside. 4 wine glasses, half filled with a deep ruby liquid that wasn't wine. Too thick, too dark, like diluted blood. And the plates, bone china, rimmed in faded gold. Each bore a name, handwritten in elegant looping script. Cassandra, Theodore, Elena, Elias. Our names, not nicknames, not last names, full baptismal names, the ones our mothers used when we were in trouble, the ones we hadn't heard in decades. Lena, Elena, touched her plate. "It's warm," she whispered. The food sat beneath silver cloches. Steam curled from the seams. Theo lifted the nearest one, roast chicken, golden skin glistening with herb butter, carrots glazed with honey, a small ramekin of mashed potatoes dotted with black truffle. Perfect, fresh, impossible. Cass checked the hearth. No pots on the fire, no oven, just the flames. I opened the small cast-iron stove beside it, cold, empty. The food hadn't been cooked here, it had been placed, waiting. Lena sat, not at her named seat, at the head of the table, where no plate rested. She folded her hands, looked at the fire. "They're almost ready," she said. "Who?" Cass asked, voice tight. "The other 2. A log shifted in the hearth, not with a crackle, with a groan, like something stretching. The firelight deepened, not orange, green, flickering, pulsing, in time with a sound, not from outside, from beneath the floor. A low, rhythmic thump, 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 like a heart or a fist, knocking from the basement. Theo moved to the trapdoor, a square of oak, iron ring handle, set into the floorboards beside the rug. It wasn't latched, just closed. He knelt, listened. The thump was clearer, closer, and beneath it a wet, rhythmic shush, 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 like something being dragged across stone. He reached for the ring. I grabbed his wrist. "Don't!" He looked at me. His eyes weren't his, not scared. "Hungry." He smiled, a small, tight thing. "They're setting the table downstairs," he said, "for the main course." Cass backed toward the door. It was closed, not locked, just shut. The bolt slid home with a soft click. No hand touched it. The lemon slices in the water glasses twitched, not floating, swimming, tentatively, like tiny pale fish. Lena stood, walked to the hearth, picked up a poker, not iron. Bone. Femur, polished smooth, capped with blackened antler. She stirred the fire. The green flames flared, and in their light I saw them, projected onto the log wall, not shadows, scenes. A family, mother, father, boy, girl, sitting at this table, laughing, eating. The mother lifts a spoonful of potatoes to the girl's lips. The girl opens her mouth. The spoon enters. But the potatoes aren't white. They're gray, grainy, like ash. The mother whispers, "Just a little more, my love, just to make you strong." The father cuts the boy's chicken. The knife doesn't slice flesh. It scrapes, like carving stone. The boy chews. His jaw moves slowly, too slowly. His eyes wide, unblinking, full of tears that don't fall. The scene shifts. The table is empty. Plates cleared. Only the salt dishes remain. The parents stand, take the children's hands, lead them to the trap door. The boy resists. The father breaks his wrist, not with anger, with patience, like snapping a twig. The girl doesn't cry. She looks at the fire, smiles. It's okay. Her lips form. The swing is waiting. They descend. The trap door closes. The parents return to the table, sit, fold their napkins, wait. The fire snaps. The vision fades. Lena lowers the poker. "The salt is important," she says, returning to the table. She picks up her salt dish. It helps the body, accept a change. She sprinkles a pinch over her chicken. The meat twitches. Cass grabs her pack. Keys, phone, anything. All dead. Batteries drained, screens black, except Lena's sketchbook. Left open on the rug. Pages flutter, not from wind, from beneath. A new drawing forms, pencil lines appearing on blank paper, fast, frenzied. A table, 4 chairs, 4 plates, 4 names, and in the center, a 5th plate, unmarked, surrounded by symbols. A broken chain, a key, a swing, a heart, split down the middle. Below it, words. They're waiting for you to sit. They're waiting for you to eat. They're waiting for you to remember. You promised to come back. You promised to fill the empty seat. I knew the promise, not consciously, in my bones, in the scar on my left wrist, the one shaped like a tiny handprint the doctor said was a birthmark, the one that burned when I stepped inside. Lena looked at me. Her eyes weren't green gold now. Black, like river stones, like the void between stars. "Do you remember the swing, Elias?" she asked. "The one in the basement? The one with the chains that don't squeak? The one that holds 2, but only works with 3? The thump, thump, thump grew louder. The shush, 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 closer. The trapdoor handle rattled, not from below, from above. Something was on the roof, walking, stopping, directly over the table. A drop of liquid fell from the ceiling, not water, thick, amber, smelling of apples and iron. It landed in Cass's water glass. The lemon slice bit it. "Dissolved!" Cass screamed, ran for the window. The glass didn't shatter. It softened like wax. Her hand sank into it, up to the wrist. She pulled back. Her skin was gone, not torn, absorbed. Beneath the raw pink flesh, tiny black seeds, pulsing. Theo laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. He lifted his wine glass, drank deeply. The liquid left a black stain on his lips. He wiped it with his napkin. The stain spread up his cheeks, into his eyes. Finally, he sighed, "I'm home." He walked to the trap door, grabbed the ring, pulled. The door opened, not to darkness, to light, green, pulsing, and the smell, overpowering now, apples, rotting, and beneath it, the coppery reek of blood and something else. Childhood, crayons, rain on pavement, the inside of the mother's wrist. Steps descended into the light. Not Theo. Not anymore. His body moved, but his head lolled, spine bent at an impossible angle, limbs twitching like a marionette with cut strings. He reached the bottom. A voice rose, not his, a chorus, children singing. Back and forth, hand in hand, across the dark, across the land. Cass collapsed, clutch in her wrist. The seeds were sprouting, tendrils thin as hair curling around her. Bones. Lena sat. At the head of the table, she picked up her fork, speared a piece of chicken, held it out to me. "Eat, Elias," she said. Mara said, "You're hungry. We're all hungry. The cabin feeds us. It keeps us. It loves us. All it asks is that we sit, that we eat, that we remember who we were before the fall." I looked at my plate. "Elias!" The chicken steamed, the carrots glistened, the salt dish waited, and beneath the food, etched into the china, visible only when the firelight hit it just so, a date. August 12th, 1958. The day Holloway Playground opened, the day Mara and her father took their first ride, the day I, Elias, let go, the day the swing broke, the day the river took her, the day I jumped in after her, the day I drowned, the day I woke up here, in the cabin, at the table with an empty seat, waiting for my daughter, for my friend, for my brother, for myself. The trapdoor exhaled. Green light spilled across the floor, cold, hungry. Lena, Mara, smiled. Her teeth were small, sharp, perfect. "Come on, Daddy," she whispered. "Sit, eat. Remember, the swing is waiting, and this time we won't let go." I picked up my fork. The metal was warm, alive. In the firelight, my reflection in the polished tines wasn't me. It was the man from the photo. Hat pulled low, eyes full of sorrow, and green gold light. I lifted the chicken to my lips. The meat was tender, sweet, salty. And as I chewed, I remembered, not the fall, the promise. If one of us falls, the other jumps too. We jumped. We drowned. We were found. By the cabin, by the thing in the basement, by the swing that needs three to turn. The seeds in Cass's wrist burst into tiny white flowers. Theo's song rose from below, clearer now. "Hold my hand and don't let go." Lena took my hand. Her skin was cold, not dead, preserved. The bone poker lay beside my plate. I picked it up, not to fight, to stir. I lifted the fire's green heart, and beneath the flames I saw it. The swing, not wood, not metal, bone. 2 seats, one small, one tall, and in the center, chains thick as wrists, fused to a third seat, empty, waiting. For me? The cabin doesn't take strangers. It recalls its family. It gathers the lost, the broken, the ones who swore on swings, on stars, on blood, that they'd never be apart. And when they return, dinner is always ready. The salt is always poured. The seats are always named. And the empty one, the one at the head of the table, it's not for a guest, it's for the host, the one who broke the promise, the one who let go, the one who must sit to finally hold on. So I sit, I eat, I remember, and as the green light fills the cabin, as the song swells, as Mara's small hand tightens in mine. I finally understand. The most terrifying thing about the cabin, deep in the woods, isn't the dinner set for 4. It's the moment you realize you were the 4th. You've always been here. You never left. You just forgot. And forgetting is the first course. The main course is remembering, and dessert. Dessert is the swing, waiting in the basement with 3 seats, all full, all smiling, all hungry for the next family, the next promise, the next fall. Because the cabin is always open, the table is always set, and the salt is always waiting to help you accept the change. With that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. The park map shows trails that don't exist until after dark. We didn't go to Holloway Greenway for ghosts. We went for the light. Cass needed B-roll. Bioluminescent ecosystems of the Appalachian Ridge. And Holloway was rumored to host Pinellus stypticus, the bitter oyster mushroom, which glows a soft green in decay. Theo, ever the skeptic with his spectrometer, scoffed, "Moisture and phosphorescent minerals, not magic." Lena, quiet Lena, just traced the park map with her finger and whispered, "The trails change." I didn't correct her, because I'd seen it too. The official park map, folded, laminated, handed out at the ranger station, listed 3 trails: Ridge Loop, 2.1 meters, Creek Spur, 0.8 meters, Summit Overlook, 1.5 meters, all marked in clean black lines, numbered blazes, clear distances. But when Lena's flashlight beam hit the kiosk at the trailhead, just after dusk, as the last gold bled from the sky, new lines appeared, not printed, glowing. Thin, serpentine paths drawn in phosphorescent green ink that hadn't been there a minute before. They branched off the main trails, curling into the dark like smoke. No names, no distances, just symbols at their termini. A swing, a chalkboard, a bridge, a cabin, a lighthouse, a train station, a mall, and one, deeper in the woods, ending in a single word, written in tiny looping script. Home. The ranger had warned us offhand while stamping our permits. Stay on marked trails after dark. The map, it gets ideas. We laughed. We walked. The ridge loop was easy, packed dirt, gentle grade, oaks and hemlocks, forming a cathedral ceiling. Fireflies winked, but no mushrooms glowed. Just the usual summer hum. Then Cass stopped. "Did you hear that? Not an animal. A voice. Faint. Layered. Children. Singing. Back and forth, hand in hand, across the dark, across the land." Theo checked his recorder. "Audio's clean. No external source. It's atmospheric resonance. Infrasound vibrating the trees." Lena pointed off the trail. Between 2 moss-covered boulders, a path, not there before, narrow, unmarked, carpeted with ferns that shimmered faintly green. At its entrance, a wooden sign, freshly carved. Swing Trail. Come on. Loyalty required. I knew the symbol, the swing, from Lena's dreams, from Holloway Playground. "Let's turn back," I said. Lena stepped onto the path. "It's warm," she whispered. The ferns underfoot weren't plants. Hair. Russet. Mara's hair. The path curved, opened into a clearing. The swing set, 2 swings, one tall, one small, chains thick as wrists, seats of polished bone, moving in flawless mechanical unison, back, pause, forward, pause, empty, inviting. Lena walked to the child swing, placed her hand on the seat. It warmed. A soft, pulsing glow spread from her palm, green gold. The chains began to hum, low, vibrant, like plucked piano wires. She turned to me. Her eyes weren't hers, full of green gold light. "It's okay, Daddy," she said, Mara's voice, older, sadder, wiser. "They just want a friend. They get lonely. The swing needs two, always two. One to go back, one to go back, one to go forward, one to go forward." She stepped onto the footrest, gripped the chains, looked at the empty adult swing. "Will you push me?" I didn't move. Behind her, the ferns shifted, not wind. Hands, pale, small, rising, offering, palm up, waiting. The singing rose, not from the recorder, but from the air itself, back and forth, hand in hand, across the dark, across the land. The swing goes high, the swing goes low. Hold my hand and don't let go. Lena swung gently, back, pause, forward, pause, alone. But the rhythm was off, stuttering, unbalanced. The green gold light in her eyes flickered. A tear, thick, clear, smelling of burnt sugar, rolled down her cheek. "They're sad," she whispered. "The swing is broken when it's only one." Then my phone buzzed. A text from my wife, sent 37 minutes ago. "Where are you? Lena's asleep in her room. She's been asleep for 2 hours." I stared at the screen, looked at Lena, standing on the swing, watching me, smiling. Her pajamas, the ones she wore to bed, blue with white stars, the same ones she'd drawn in her dream, the same ones in the photos on my phone. My breath stopped. The phone buzzed again. Another text. From an unknown number, no name, just a photo. Black and white, faded, a playground, Holloway Park, 1958, opening day, a crowd of children, in the foreground, 2 swings, occupied, a man in a dark suit, a little girl, blonde hair, blue dress, both smiling, the man's face blurred, the girl's clear. My daughter's face, Lena's face, same freckles, same crooked front tooth, same eyes, full of green gold light. Beneath the photo, Elias and Mara, first ride, August 12th, 1958. Mara, my mother's name. Her sister, dead before I was born, drowned in Cedar Creek, 1959. "She was playing near the old bridge," my grandmother said. "They found her shoes by the water, neatly placed, like she took them off before stepping in." I looked up. Lena, Mara, was still on the swing, but the adult swing was no longer empty. A figure sat there, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit, hat pulled low, one hand gripping the chain, the other reaching across the 6 feet of space, toward Lena, toward me. The figure lifted its head, mine, older, worn, eyes full of green gold light and sorrow, so much sorrow. Lena, Mara, reached out. Her small hand met his. Their fingers twined. The swings began to move. Back, pause, forward, pause, perfect, unbreakable. The green gold light flared. The ferns beneath my feet softened, gave way. I sank to my knees, not into moss, into hands, cold, welcoming, pulling. The song rose. Back and forth, hand in hand, across the dark, across the land. The swing goes high, the swing goes low. Hold my hand and don't let go. Lena looked at me, not with fear, with love. "Come on, Daddy," she said, Mara said. "It's time. The swing needs 3 now." The adult swing beside her slowed, stopped, empty, waiting for me. I stood, walked forward, placed my hands on the cold, rusted chains, sat. The seat molded to me, not metal, bone, warm, alive. Lena, Mara, reached for my left hand. The figure, me, reached for my right, our fingers locked. The swing began to move. Back, pause, forward, pause. Not 2 anymore. 3. The rhythm was different now, deeper, stronger. The hum and the chains became a song. The green gold light filled the clearing, and from the ferns, hundreds of small hands rose, clapping, gently, in time, because Holloway Greenway doesn't take children, it keeps them. It holds the ones who fell, the ones who jumped, the ones who let go, and it waits for the ones who swore on swings, on stars, on pinky promises, I'll never leave you. The swing arcs higher. The wind smells of river water and childhood, and as we rise, together, hand in hand, past the treetops, into the green gold dark, I finally understand. The trails don't appear after dark. They remember. They recall the paths we walked, the promises we made, the falls we took. And the most terrifying thing about Holloway Greenway isn't the glowing map. It's the moment you realize you were always on the trail, and the moment you finally remember is the moment the ferns begin to pull you back. Back, pause, forward, pause, back, forever. And with that, this story comes to an end. Let's move on to the next one. Fresh towels were found on beds in a wing with no water. Since 1987, I took the janitorial job at the Grand Regent because the methadone clinic wouldn't refill my prescription without proof of income, and the only thing standing between me and a cardboard box under the Burnside Bridge was a pair of rubber gloves and a bucket of bleach. The job posting was handwritten on a napkin tucked under the wiper blade of my rusted-out Corolla. Cleaner needed, Grand Regent Hotel, $150 cash day, no questions, no water, in East Wing. The address led me through downtown Portland's industrial graveyard, past shuttered meatpacking plants and auto shops with skeletons of half-dismantled Chevys, to a 1920s Beaux-Arts monstrosity wedged between a condemned grain silo and the Willamette River's oil-slicked shore. Its grand entrance was bricked up with cinder blocks stamped, "Condemned Black Mold Infestation." The side door marked "Hazmat Crew Only. Respirators Required." Stood slightly ajar, exhaling air that smelled of wet stone and forgotten funerals. Silas met me in the lobby. Not the gaunt man from Hollowbrook Sanatorium, but someone worse. Same name. Same hollow eyes, the color of stagnant pond water. Different face. This Silas was younger, mid-40s maybe, but aged by something deeper than time. His uniform hung off him like a shroud, stained with dark patches that might have been grease or something thicker. He didn't offer his hand, just thrust a ring of keys into my palm, cold iron teeth biting into my skin, and a clipboard with a single sheet of paper. "East Wing only," he rasped, his voice raw as scraped cement. "Floors 2 through 6, all rooms sealed. Your job is dust, just dust. If you see wet towels on beds, log it. Don't touch them, don't smell them, don't look at them too long. And whatever you do, whatever, don't follow the dripping sound." He tapped the clipboard. "Sign here. Your name's already filled in." I looked down. My name, Maggie Hayes, was scrawled in shaky blue ink beside shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Beneath it, handwritten in the same ink but different handwriting, East Wing Towel Log, March 18th, 42 towels observed. Source unknown. Water main severed 1987. Recommend spiritual remediation. Silas was already walking away, his boots silent on the marble floor. "Oh," he called without turning, "the showers in the staff room, they work. Use them. You'll want to be clean when you leave." He vanished through a door marked "Boiler Room. Authorized personnel only," leaving me alone in a lobby, drowning in dust and shadow. The East Wing's hallway stretched into darkness, sealed off from the rest of the hotel by a thick steel door bolted shut with a padlock the size of my fist. Silas's master key turned with a groan that echoed like a dying man's sigh. Beyond it, the air changed, colder, thicker, smelling of mildew and something faintly sweet, like rotting lilies. No lights. Worked. My headlamp beam cut through the gloom, illuminating peeling gold leaf wallpaper and carpet so thick with grime it felt like walking on grave soil. Every room door was sealed with crisscrossed yellow tape stamped, "Do not enter. Water damage. Structural hazard." I started on the second floor, room 201. Dust coated every surface like gray snow. I swept it into a pile, the broom scratching against the floorboards. The bed was stripped bare, mattress stained with dark, uneven patches. And there, neatly folded at the foot of the bed, a towel, pristine white terry cloth, fluffy, smelling faintly of lavender. Impossible. I checked the log sheet, scrawled in fresh ink, Room 201, one towel, fabric, 100% cotton, scent, lavender. I left it, moved to 202, same dust, same stripped bed, same impossible towel, this one slightly damp. The log entry appeared as I stared. Room 202, one towel, damp, scent, lavender, and river water. By noon, I'd logged 28 towels, some dry, some dripping, one wrapped around a rusted bedpost like a serpent. The log filled itself in my handwriting, though I hadn't touched the pen. Room 237, towel warm to the touch, steam rising, scent, Earl Grey tea, and antiseptic. That's when I heard the dripping, not from the towels, from deeper in the wing, a slow, rhythmic plink, 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 echoing from the third-floor stairwell. Silas's warning screamed in my head, "Don't follow the dripping sound." But the sound, it wasn't just water, it was a pattern, like Morse code, like a heartbeat. I followed it. The third-floor hallway was darker. My headlamp flickered. The dripping grew louder, leading me to room 313. Its door wasn't sealed. The yellow tape hung in shreds, as if torn by frantic hands. Inside, the room was untouched by dust. Moonlight streamed through a window overlooking the Willamette, painting stripes across a perfectly made bed, and on the pillow, 3 folded towels, stacked like a wedding cake. The top one was damp. Dark water seeped from its edges, pooling on the pillowcase. The dripping came from the bathroom. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The bathroom door stood open, no mold, no rust, just gleaming white tiles and a claw-foot tub filled not with water, but with thick, black fluid that smelled of roses and wet earth. In the center of the tub floated a single item, my mother's silver locket, the one I'd buried with her after the overdose, the one I'd pawned 10 years ago for my first hit of fentanyl. Water dripped from the faucet. Plink, plink, plink. Each drop hit the black fluid with a sound like a sigh. With each plink, the locket rose slightly. With each plink, my chest tightened. With each plink, the towel log on my clipboard filled itself. Room 313, towels, 3. Guest, Margaret Hayes. Deceased. Request, cleanliness. Notes, daughter refuses to wash her hands of guilt. I stumbled back, into the hallway. The log sheet was gone from my clipboard. In its place, a single sheet of hotel stationery, the ink bleeding through the paper like tears. They aren't for drying. They're for wrapping. The Grand Regent doesn't give clean towels. It takes dirty souls. Eleanor Voss, from Camp Everstill, from the bellwether logs, from the Seelbach mirrors. Her words were a thread in a tapestry of hunger I couldn't escape. Silas found me slumped against the wall outside 313, shaking. He didn't ask what I'd seen, just pressed a fresh log sheet into my hands. "You're late for checkout," he said flatly. "The towels multiply when witnesses linger." He peered into room 313. His face didn't change when he saw the tub. "Your mother's locket. She left it behind when she walked into the river, just like you left behind the guilt." "She didn't walk," I whispered. "I found her on the bathroom floor, pills everywhere. I was 16. I just stood there, didn't call 911 fast enough, didn't know CPR. I washed her face with a towel, a white one, like these." Silas nodded slowly. "The Regent remembers every unwashed sin, every unwept tear. The East Wing has no water because the pipes are full of something else. Something thicker, it leaks out as towels, as locket dreams, as the need to be clean." He touched the damp towel on 303's bed. It steamed under his fingers. "This wing isn't sealed because of mold. It's sealed because the grief here is contagious. It seeps into your skin like river water, makes you heavy, makes you sink." He led me downstairs, past rooms where towels now covered every surface, draped over chairs, piled on dressers, stuffed into light fixtures. The dripping sound followed us, a steady plink, plink, plink that echoed in my bones. In the staff room, he pointed to a working shower. "Clean yourself. The towels know when you're carrying dirt." The hot water scalded my skin. I scrubbed until my arms were raw, but the smell of river water clung to me. When I turned off the taps, the dripping started again, not from the shower head, from the mirror. Dark fluid seeped from the glass, pooling on the sink. In the reflection, room 303's black tub filled the mirror's surface. My mother floated in it, eyes closed, hair fanned out like seaweed. In her hand, she held not pills, but a folded towel. She opened her eyes. They were the color of the Willamette at midnight. "Washed clean," they seemed to say. "Be washed clean." I fled the staff room. Silas was gone. The front doors were chained shut. The plink, plink, plink was everywhere now, a sound not just of water, but of weight, of things settling, of souls sinking. I ran back to the East Wing. The steel door stood open. Moonlight bled through the third-floor windows. Every sealed room door hung open. Every bed held towels, not folded, arranged, stacked into pyramids, twisted into ropes, laid out like shrouds. And in the center of the hallway, where no room existed on the blueprints, stood a new door, unmarked, unsealed. Its wood was dark with moisture. The dripping came from behind it. I pushed it open. Not a room, a chamber. Walls lined with shelves holding thousands of folded towels, each labeled with a name and date in that same blue ink. Sarah Miller, 1987. Eleanor Voss, 1987. Mildred Calloway, 1973. Daniel Finch, 1958. And at eye level, a fresh label. Margaret Hayes, 2026. Below it, 3 pristine white towels waited. In the center of the chamber stood a stone basin, carved with symbols that made my eyes water. It was filled with the same black fluid from room 313's tub. Floating in it was my mother's locket. And beside the basin, an armchair faced a window overlooking not the Willamette, but a vast, still lake under a moonless sky. Blackwater Lake, Camp Everstill's grave. The chair was empty, but the cushion was damp. A child's voice whispered from the basin, bubbling up with the plink, plink, plink. "She's waiting for you to sit, to be clean." Sarah Miller stepped from behind the shelves, not bloated, not blue. Just a girl in a yellow sundress, barefoot, her hair dripping lake water onto the stone floor. In her hand, She held a towel. It steamed faintly. "The Regent doesn't want your pain," she said. Her voice echoed with the sound of children singing underwater. "It wants your stain, the things that make you dirty, your guilt, your shame, your mother's pills, your slow hands. It washes them away, leaves you empty, shiny, ready to be folded." I backed toward the door. "I don't want to be empty." Sarah smiled, a smile too wide for her face. "Everyone wants to be clean." She pointed to the chair. "Your mother's been waiting since you left her on that bathroom floor. She carried your guilt for 20 years. Now it's your turn to carry hers." The black fluid in the basin rippled. My mother rose from it, not as she was in death, pale, slack-jawed, surrounded by pill bottles, but as she was before the darkness took her, warm eyes, auburn hair, the scent of lavender soap clinging to her skin. She held out a hand, not to me, to the 7-year-old me who'd found her, the child who'd never stopped scrubbing her hands raw. "The towels don't dry you," my mother whispered. Her voice was the sound of a river smoothing stones. "They replace you, one layer at a time, until there's nothing left but clean white cotton where your heart used to be." She stepped onto the dry stone floor. The black fluid didn't drip from her. It clung to her like a second skin. "Sit, Maggie. Let the stillness wash us both." Sarah placed the steaming towel in my hands. It was warm, heavy, smelling of lavender and river mud. As I held it, memories flooded me, not just mine. 100 lifetimes of unwashed grief poured through the terry cloth. A man sobbing over a car crash he caused, a woman staring at an empty crib, a boy dropping his father's fishing hat into dark water. The Grand Regent didn't just collect pain, it recycled it. Turned sorrow into fresh towels for the next lost soul. I dropped the towel. "No." Sarah's smile vanished. The chamber darkened. The black fluid in the basin rose, forming shapes, hands, faces, open mouths, screaming silently. My mother's reflection in the fluid twisted, her eyes black voids. "The Regent hungers," she gurgled. "It has since the fire of '87. When the guests burned, their guilt didn't burn with them. It seeped into the foundations, became the water that isn't water, the towels that aren't towels." "Sit." The armchair slid toward me, scraping the stone. The black fluid pooled around my ankles, cold and thick as grave soil. It carried whispers. "Clean me, fold me, forget me." I ran, back through the east wing, past rooms where towels now slithered like living things, across the floors, past hallways where the dripping had become a flood. The steel door to the main hotel was locked. I pounded on it. "Silas, let me out!" The dripping stopped. Silence. Thick, suffocating. Then a single plink. From the lobby mirror. I turned. Every mirror in the Grand Regent, shattered, boarded up, dust-covered, reflected the same scene. Not the decaying lobby. The chamber, the stone basin, the armchair. And in the chair, facing the window overlooking Blackwater Lake, sat my mother. Her body was wrapped head to toe in white towels, only her face exposed. Her eyes were closed, peaceful, clean. On the floor beside her chair lay a single folded towel, waiting for me. Silas's voice came from the boiler room door, calm, resigned. "You can't outrun what you carry, Maggie. The Regent doesn't just remember the dead, it remembers the living who wish they were dead. The towels, they're not for the guests, they're for the ones who survive." He stepped into the lobby, holding the master key. His eyes held no judgment, only sorrow. "Your mother sat. She's clean now, at peace. The chair won't be empty long. The Regent always finds new stains to wash." He pressed a fresh log sheet into my hands. My name wasn't on it, just an entry in blue ink. Vacancy filled, Margaret Hayes. Towels used. 3. Soul status, clean. Next guest, TBD. I looked at my reflection in the lobby mirror, not my face, my mother's, wrapped in towels, smiling. The dripping started again, not from the mirrors, from my own hands. Dark fluid seeped from my pores, pooling on the marble floor. The scent of lavender filled the air. Silas placed a warm, dry towel over my shoulders. It felt like forgiveness, like surrender. "The chair is waiting," he whispered. "Be clean." I walked back to the east wing. The new door stood open. Moonlight streamed through the window in the chamber, painting silver stripes on the stone floor. My mother's wrapped form sat serene in the armchair. Sarah Miller stood beside her, holding a fresh towel. I sat down. The black fluid rose warm and gentle as bathwater. It didn't burn. It cleansed. The guilt of my mother's death, the shame of my addiction, the weight of surviving when others didn't, it all dissolved in the dark water. My skin tingled. My mind went quiet. Peace. Such sweet, silent peace. Sarah draped the towel over my head. It smelled of lavender and home. As it settled over my face, the last thing I saw was the basin. My reflection wasn't there, only my mother's face smiling. Her towel-wrapped hand reached out, not to touch me, but to take the locket floating in the fluid. She pressed it to her chest, where her heart used to be. The towel grew heavier, warm, like a blanket pulled up on a winter night. Plink. The drip had stopped. Silas found the log sheet on the front desk at dawn. He added one line in his own shaky hand. East Wing Towel. Log, March 19th. 0 towels observed. All guests washed clean. He locked the steel door, took the master key, drove to a Greyhound station in Beaverton. A young man with hollow eyes and track marks on his arms sat on a bench, clutching a crumpled napkin. Silas placed the key in his palm. It was warm, damp, smelling faintly of lavender. "The Regent is hiring," Silas rasped. "East Wing only." The bus pulled away. Silas walked back to the Grand Regent. In the sealed east wing, behind the bolted steel door, the stone basin filled itself with black fluid. Floating in it was a new locket, engraved on its surface, Jamie Rousseau. And on the armchair facing the window, 3 pristine white towels waited, folded, ready. Some vacancies aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be folded. And this story ends here. The next one begins now. This bridge was closed after too many accidents. Now it calls drivers back. They sealed it with concrete barricades, steel plates, and 20 feet of chain-link fence crowned with razor wire. County engineers called it a permanent decommissioning. The State Transportation Board labeled it a non-recoverable hazard. Locals just called it the mouth, not for its shape, though the twin arches did resemble parted lips, but for what it did. It took people, swallowed them whole, and sometimes, just sometimes, it called them back. I'd read the reports. 47 accidents in 17 years on the Blackwater Trestle. Officially, County Bridge. 412. But no one used the number. A narrow 2-lane iron lattice spanning the Blackwater Gorge, built in 1928 to serve a coal camp that shuttered in 52. No shoulders. No guardrails beyond waist-high railings rusted through at the base. A 320-foot drop to the river below, choked with shale and the skeletal ribs of long dead trees The accidents didn't follow patterns, no blind curves, no black ice hotspots, no faulty signage, just moments. Drivers reported sudden disorientation, headlights dimming, radios cutting to static, the road ahead shimmering like heat haze over asphalt in July. Then, without braking, without swerving, they'd drift left, right, straight off the edge. No skid marks, no evasive maneuvers, just tire tracks ending at the precipice. And the cars rarely recovered. The river ran fast, deep, and cold, an acidic brew from old mine runoff that ate steel like sugar. Of the 32 vehicles confirmed lost, only 9 were ever found. Of those, 5 were empty, 3 held bodies, intact, unbruised, no signs of trauma, laid neatly across the back seats, hands folded over their chests, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. One, a '98 Ford Taurus, was found upright on a gravel bar, engine cold, keys in the ignition, driver's seat empty. On the dashboard, written in condensation, "It's still hungry." The final straw was the Henderson incident, November 14, 2019. State Trooper Daniel Henderson responding to a 911 call from the bridge itself. A disconnected payphone, reactivated for 37 seconds, drove onto the span at 2:18 a.m. His dash cam captured the last 42 seconds. 100K headlights illuminate the steel latticework. Rain streaks the lens. 100R12 radio static, then a voice. Female, calm, familiar. "Dan, honey, you forgot the milk." His wife's voice. She'd been dead for 3 years. 124. Henderson glances at the passenger seat. Smiles. "Be right back, Lorna." 131. He turns the wheel, not sharply, gently, like merging onto a highway. 137. The railing gives way with a sound like snapping bone. 142. Screen goes black. The bridge closed the next day. Concrete poured into the approach roads. "Danger! Structural failure imminent" signs, posted every 50 feet. They even cut the power lines feeding the old mercury vapor lamps that lined the walkway. Useless, since the bulbs had burned out decades ago, but the lights still came on every night. At 2:17 a.m., a soft, greenish glow, like swamp gas or foxfire, rises from the bridge deck, outlining the arches, illuminating the rusted lattice against the starless sky. I went because I needed to hear it, not the wind, not the river. The voice. My sister Mara went over the railing on March 3, 2011, no note, no warning, just her 05 Honda Civic, found 3 days later wedged between 2 shale spires, passenger door open, driver's seat empty. Her phone, recovered from the glove box, contained one voicemail, recorded at 2:16 a.m., time-stamped during the fall. I'd never played it, not once, but the investigator let slip. It wasn't her voice on the other end. It sounded like her, but wrong, like she was speaking through water. So on. November 13th, 2025, the eve of the 6th anniversary of the Henderson incident, I parked my truck a mile east of the barricades, slipped through a gap in the fence. The razor wire had been cut, recently, cleanly, and walked the old service path along the gorge rim. The air was thick with the smell of wet iron and decaying leaves. The river below gurgled, a low guttural sound, like something trying to swallow and choke at the same time. I reached the east abutment just after midnight. The bridge loomed ahead, 240 feet of skeletal iron, draped in vines that looked less like kudzu and more like tendons. The concrete plugs in the roadway were cracked, not from weather, from pressure. Something had pushed up from below. I stepped onto the deck. The wood planks, original yellow pine treated with creosote, groaned under my boots. Not the dry crack of rot, a moan, deep, resonant, like a ship's hull straining in heavy seas. I walked to the center. The river churned. 300 feet down, black and oily, reflecting no starlight. I pulled out Mara's phone. The battery was dead, but I'd rigged a power bank. I plugged it in. The screen flickered to life. One voicemail, unplayed. I tapped it, static. Then her voice, but not hers. Slower, wetter, each syllable drawn out, as if spoken through a throat full of river silt. Eli? It's me, Mara. Okay. I made it across. The other side is quiet, warm. They're waiting for you. They remember you. They say, you promised to come back. Remember? When we were kids, we swore on the railing. Pinky swear. You said, if one of us falls, the other jumps too. A pause, the sound of water dripping, then closer, almost in my ear. It's not a fall, Eli. It's a step. Just let go. The bridge will catch you. It always catches us. It holds us. It sings to us. Listen. Silence. Then a sound, not on the recording. Here. Faint at first. A hum. Low, vibrating up through the soles of my boots. The bridge was singing. A single, sustained note. C-sharp, Theo would have called it, resonating through the iron lattice, the wooden planks, the very air. It wasn't mechanical. It was biological, like the sound of 1,000 rib cages expanding at once. I looked down. The green light was rising, not from bulbs, from beneath the planks. Between the cracks, thin lines of phosphorescent green pulsing in time with the hum. I knelt, pried up a loose board with my pocket knife. Below, the substructure, not rusted steel beams. Bone. Massive, curved vertebrae, some fused, some cracked, arching over the gorge. Iron rivets driven through ossified joints, tendons thick as cables, strung between them, glistening with a viscous amber fluid that glowed faintly green. The bridge wasn't built over the gorge. It was built on top of something. Something that had been there long before the coal camp. Something that had let them build on it, because it liked the traffic, liked the weight, liked the falling. I stood. The hum deepened, the green light brightened, and then the voice, not from the phone, from the bridge itself. A chorus. Dozens of voices, men, women, children, all speaking in unison, soft, insistent. Eli, come home. The railing is warm. The fall is short. We're waiting. We saved you a place, in the ribs, in the marrow, in the song. I backed toward the east end. The planks behind me began to lift, not creaking, breathing. Each board rising slightly like ribs expanding. The gaps widened. Green light poured out. And in the light I saw them, hands, pale, water bloated, fingers webbed with translucent membrane, reaching up, not grasping. Inviting, one brushed my ankle, cold, not dead cold. Alive, cold, like river stone in deep shade. I ran, not toward the barricade, toward the west abutment, the side facing the old coal camp, now a ghost town of collapsed shacks and rusted machinery. I knew what was there, the source. The engineer's final report mentioned it in passing. Anomalous geological feature at western terminus, a sinkhole 40 feet in diameter, filled with collapsed timber and metal debris. Sealed with concrete in 1987 after 3 workers vanished during routine inspection. They didn't seal it. They fed it. I reached the west end. The concrete plug was gone. In its place, a hole, not dark, green, pulsing like a heartbeat. The hum was deafening now, a physical pressure in my chest, my skull. The voices rose, not chanting, singing, A lullaby, Mara's lullaby, the one she sang to me when I had nightmares. Hush now, don't you cry. The river's deep, but the bridge is high. If you fall, don't fight the tide. The mouth will hold you deep inside. I looked over the railing. The river wasn't below, not anymore. The gorge had closed. The shale walls had drawn together, and at the bottom, where the water should have been, a mouth, vast, jawbones of petrified wood and iron, teeth, shattered concrete, twisted rebar, the grills of cars, tongue, a churning mass of vines, cables, and pale-reaching limbs, all glowing green, all singing. And in the center, 2 empty sockets, waiting for eyes. My eyes. The phone in my hand vibrated. A new voicemail from an unknown number. I played it. Mara's voice, clear now, warm, loving. You're late, baby brother. Roll call's starting. They're taking names. Say you're here. Say it. Just say here and step close. The railing wants to hold you. It remembers your hands. It remembers your weight. It remembers the day we swore. Say it, Eli. Say, here. I looked at my hands. On the railing, faint but clear. 2 small handprints. Mine. From when I was 12. When we swore. Pinky swear. If one of us falls, the other jumps too. The bridge remembered. It kept the oath. And oaths in places like this aren't promises, they're contracts. The hum peaked, the green light flared, the hands rose higher, and the voice, Mara's voice, but layered with dozens more, whispered one last time, Say it, Eli, say here, or we'll come get you. And we won't be gentle. I opened my mouth, the word formed on my tongue. Here, simple, final. The bridge leaned into me, the railing warmed, the river below opened wider, and in that moment, I understood the accidents weren't failures, they were successes. Every fall was a homecoming, every empty car was a delivery. The bridge didn't kill, it harvested. It gathered the lost, the lonely, the broken-hearted, and it held them in its ribs, in its song, in its endless green-lit dark. And tonight it wanted me, not because I was curious, not because I was grieving, but because I'd sworn, and the mouth always collects its due. So I took a breath, leaned forward, and whispered, not here, but I remember. The bridge shuddered, not in anger, in joy. The green light surged, the hum became a roar, and from the depths the mouth opened wider, not to swallow, to welcome. Because the hungriest thing about Blackwater Trestle wasn't the fall, it was the waiting, the decades of silence, the years of empty lanes, the ache of a promise unfulfilled. And now, at last, the final name was being called, mine, and I was finally ready to answer. With that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. The elevator descended 1 floor too many, opening onto an unplanned lobby. I took the night shift elevator operator job at the Obsidian Tower because the paycheck covered my sister's medical bills. Not the whole bill, just the copay for her biweekly transfusions. The rest came from selling plasma twice a week and skipping meals until my ribs pressed sharp against my skin. The ad was taped to a bulletin board in a 24-hour laundromat where I'd been sleeping in my rusted Corolla. Elevator attendant needed, Obsidian Tower, 25 HR cash, no experience, must work nights, discretion required. No address, just coordinates that led me through downtown Portland's underbelly. A district of pawn shops with barred windows and alleys reeking of urine and fried food, until I found the tower. It wasn't on any map. Rising like a shard of broken obsidian between a shuttered tattoo parlor and a dumpster overflowing with rotting produce. The building was all wrong. 20 stories tall, but the street-level entrance was boarded up with plywood stamped, "Condemned by Order of City Council, 1987. The side alley entrance, a rusted metal door marked "Service Personnel Only, Biosolids Handling," was the only way in. I knocked 3 times, the way the voice on the phone had instructed. The door creaked open. An old man stood there. Not just old. Ancient. His skin hung loose on his skull like melted candle wax. One milky eye drifted toward his ear, the other fixed on me with unnerving clarity. He wore a frayed elevator operator's uniform, brass buttons tarnished green. No name tag, just a silver key dangling from a chain around his neck. "You're late," he rasped. His breath smelled of wet pennies and mothballs. "Shift starts at midnight, ends at dawn. You operate only the service elevator. You do not speak to passengers. You do not make eye contact. You do not press any button unless a passenger requests it. And you never acknowledge Floor B." "Floor B?" His good eye narrowed. "It doesn't exist. If the panel shows it, it's a glitch. If a passenger asks for it, they're confused. You reset the panel. You take them to the lobby. You forget it happened." He thrust a heavy brass key into my hand. It was ice cold. "This unlocks the service elevator. Only tonight. At 5:59 a.m., you return it to the hook behind the panel. If you're late, the tower remembers." He stepped back, letting me into a narrow concrete hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. "Your predecessor quit without notice, left his key on the floor." He pointed to a dark stain on the concrete. "Don't be like him." The service elevator was a relic. Brass doors etched with peacocks, now dull and pitted. Inside, a control panel of bakelite buttons glowed faintly green. L for lobby, 1 through 20, and a blank space where B should be. The air smelled of oil and something faintly sweet, like forgotten fruit left to rot. I slipped a brass key into a hidden slot beneath the panel. The elevator hummed to life. Midnight. The first passenger arrived at 12:17 a.m., a woman in a 1940s floral dress, her hair pinned neatly, carrying a small suitcase. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just extended a hand holding a silver key card stamped 13. I inserted it into the reader beside the panel. The elevator descended smoothly. At floor 13, the doors opened onto a hallway identical to the one in the Ravenswood Grand, the one with the mirrors facing every door. The woman stepped out without a backward glance. The doors closed. The panel flickered. For 3 seconds, the blank space where B should be glowed a sickly green. I slammed my palm against the reset button. The light died. 1:03 a.m. A man in a bellhop uniform, red braid on his sleeve, cap pulled low, handed me a key card. 2:17. His face was smooth, featureless, blank as polished stone. The elevator descended. At floor 2, the doors opened onto the lobby of the Aurora Grand, the one with the blue staff key cards scattered like dead leaves. The bellhop stepped out. As the doors closed, I saw him in the reflection of the brass doors. His uniform had changed. Now he wore the stained overalls of Silas from Hollowbrook Sanatorium. He turned his blank face toward the elevator, smiled. The panel flickered. Ba glowed. I reset it. My hands shook. 3:48 a.m., a child no older than 8, dripping wet. Her yellow sundress clung to her thin frame. Water pooled around her bare feet. She held out a key card. 17. Sarah Miller, from Camp Everstill. From the black water, the elevator descended. Her small hand gripped the railing. She hummed under her breath. Row, row, row your boat. At floor 3, the doors opened onto a forest at twilight. Ancient pines, a still black lake. Sarah stepped out, turned back. Her eyes were the color of lake silt. He's waiting for you, she whispered. In the unplanned place. The doors closed. The panel flickered violently. Burned green. I reset it. Too late. The elevator lurched downward, not stopping at lobby, not stopping at sub-basement. The indicator dial spun wildly. L. B. The descent lasted forever. The cables groaned like dying things. The lights flickered, plunging us into darkness, then flaring back to life. The sweet rot smell intensified, mixed now with the scent of wet earth and roses. The brass doors began to weep. Dark fluid seeping from the seams, dripping onto the floor. It smelled like the lake at Camp Everstill, like the mud beneath Hollowbrook's floorboards, like the void behind the Ravenswood Grand's mirrors. The elevator stopped with a shudder. The doors slid open. Not a basement, not a boiler room, a lobby. Vast, impossibly vast, stretching farther than the human eye should perceive. Marble floors veined with black, reflecting the light of 1,000 crystal chandeliers hanging from a ceiling lost in shadow. Velvet ropes cordoned off empty check-in desks. A grand staircase swept upward into darkness, and everywhere, mirrors. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors lining every wall, reflecting the endless lobby, multiplying the chandeliers, the ropes, the emptiness. But the reflections were wrong, distorted. In one mirror, the chandeliers burned with cold blue flame. In another, the marble floor was cracked, weeds pushing through the stone. In a third, the ropes were made of frayed human hair. The air was silent, not quiet. Silent. The absence of sound pressed against my eardrums like deep water, and the cold, deep, bone-aching cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the cold of forgotten graves, of stillness that had lasted too long. I stepped out. The brass doors hissed shut behind me, locked. The panel inside showed only bouquet, glowing steadily, no reset button. That's when I saw them. Figures, dozens, hundreds, standing motionless behind the velvet ropes, waiting in line at the empty check-in desks, sitting on plush benches beneath the chandeliers, all facing the mirrors, all dressed in clothes from different eras, a flapper dress from the 1920s, a bellhop uniform from the 1950s, a sundress from the 1980s, all utterly still, all utterly silent, and all staring at their own reflections. Their faces in the glass weren't theirs. The reflections showed bloated corpses floating in black water, skeletons draped in moth-eaten finery, figures made of shifting shadows and lake weeds. The real people didn't seem to notice. They just stared, frozen in place, as if waiting for permission to move. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around. The ancient elevator operator stood there. His good eye gleamed in the chandelier light. The other remained clouded, drifting. He no longer wore his uniform. He wore a tailored suit from another century, threadbare at the cuffs. In his hand, he held a silver ledger book. "Welcome to the Unplanned lobby," he said, his voice no longer raspy. Clear, resonant, ancient. "We've been waiting for you." "Who are you?" I whispered. "I am the keeper, And this is where the forgotten go when even the abandoned places forget them. He opened the ledger. The pages were filled with names, not written, but formed. From dark water that shifted and pooled on the paper, names I knew: Eleanor Voss, Sarah Miller, Mildred Calloway, Alastair Finch. And at the bottom, a fresh entry in shimmering ink: Alice Chen. My name. "You're not alive," I said. The words tasted like ash. He smiled, a terrible, gentle smile. "Neither are you. Not truly. You died 3 weeks ago in that car crash on Highway 99. The one you don't remember because the stillness took it from you, took the pain, took the guilt of surviving when your sister didn't." He tapped the ledger. "The tower collects what the world discards: grief, guilt, unfinished stories. It offers peace. A place to sit, to be still, to be remembered." I stumbled back. "No, I'm alive. I feel my heartbeat." "Because the stillness lets you feel it," he finished softly. "It lets you believe until you're ready to join the queue." He pointed to the nearest mirror. "Look!" I turned. My reflection wasn't me. It was my sister. Pale, tubes snaking from her arms, her eyes wide with the terror of the crash I couldn't remember, the crash where I'd lived and she hadn't. Her reflection mouthed 2 words: "Let go." Behind her, in the mirror's depth, I saw the chair. The armchair from room 13 at the Bellwether, facing a window overlooking Blackwater Lake. On the seat cushion sat my mother's cracked teacup, filled with dark water, and beside it a single pearl earring, Mildred Calloway's. "You carried too much," the keeper said. "The stillness hungers for it. The elevator didn't malfunction. It chose you. It sensed the vacancy in your chest where your sister's heartbeat should be." He placed a cold hand on my arm. "Sit. The chair's waiting. The story's finished." I ran, past the silent figures, past the velvet ropes, toward the grand staircase. The marble steps were slick with the dark fluid weeping from the elevator. Halfway up, I glanced back. The figures were no longer still. They turned as one, smooth, mechanical. Their faces were blank now, all of them. No eyes, no mouths, just smooth, pale skin. They moved toward me, not walking, but sliding across the marble, their feet never lifting. The silence deepened, becoming a physical pressure, crushing my lungs. I reached the top of the stairs. A hallway stretched into darkness. Every door stood open. Every room held a single armchair facing a window. Every window showed a different abandoned place. The rotting floorboards of Camp Everstill, the mirrored hallway of the Ravenswood Grand, the lake at Hollowbrook. Room 1313. I slammed the door shut, locked it with a tarnished brass key that materialized in my palm, leaned against the wood, gasping. The chair sat in the center of the room. Moonlight streamed through the window, showing not Portland, but the black expanse of Blackwater Lake. On the seat cushion lay the teacup, full, steaming. The smell of Earl Grey filled the air. My sister's voice whispered from the cup, "You promised you'd take me to the lake one last time." I hadn't. I'd been too busy working, too busy surviving. The crash happened on the way to pick up her medication. I survived with a broken arm. She didn't survive at all. The guilt had eaten me alive until the stillness found me, offering numbness, offering forgetfulness, offering a job at a hotel that didn't exist. The doorknob rattled, softly at first, then violently. The wood groaned, cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Through the keyhole, I saw smooth, featureless faces pressed against the gap, blank eyes, hungry silence. I picked up the teacup. The warmth spread through my chest. The words came unbidden. "I'm sorry, May. I should have been there. I should have driven slower. I should have held your hand when you were afraid." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you. I always will." The cup emptied itself. The rattling stopped. The cracks in the door sealed shut. Moonlight warmed my face. Outside the window, May floated on the lake's surface. Not broken, not tubes, just my little sister at 12, laughing as she skipped stones. She waved, smiled. Her reflection in the glass wasn't water. It was the sunlit pier at Camp Everstill, the way it looked before the stillness took it. The chair was warm beneath me. The floral upholstery felt like the armchair in our childhood living room. The scraping stopped. The cold lifted. The silence wasn't crushing anymore. It was peaceful, complete. The door opened. The keeper stood there holding the silver ledger. He didn't smile, just nodded. "Welcome home." He placed the ledger on my lap. The final entry glowed. Alice Chen, room 1313, vacancy filled. Below it, a new line formed in dark water. Next attendant required. Apply within. I looked up. The keeper was gone. The door stood open. In the hallway, the silent figures had returned to their places, waiting, watching their distorted reflections. I closed my eyes. The last thing I felt was the chair rocking gently beneath me. Not from the wind, from something breathing in the space behind me. Something that had waited 40 years for this moment. Something that would keep waiting. At 5:59 a.m., the service elevator in the obsidian tower chimed softly in the condemned alley. The brass doors slid open, empty. On the floor lay a single item, a heavy brass key. Ice cold. A shadow detached itself from the alley wall. A young man in a threadbare jacket, dark circles under his eyes, clutching a crumpled job ad. He picked up the key. His hands didn't shake. His breath didn't fog in the morning air. He didn't remember the car crash, didn't remember his sister's name, didn't remember why he was here. He only knew the stillness had called him, and the vacancy needed filling. He stepped into the elevator, inserted the key. The panel glowed green. La Paix. All the way to 20 Coeur, and the blank space where Paix should be. He pressed. Play. The doors closed. The cables groaned. The descent began. And that's where this story ends. Let's move on to the next one. I woke up in a hospital. The staff won't tell me what year it is. The first sensation was the hum, a low, soft, persistent thrum that seemed to vibrate not just in my ears, but in the very marrow of my bones. It was the sound of a perfectly functioning, utterly sterile machine. The second sensation was the smell, antiseptic, clean to the point of being aggressive, a scent so devoid of organic life it felt like the opposite of breathing. My eyes opened. The world was a uniform, shadowless, milky white. The ceiling, the walls, the thin synthetic blanket covering me, all the same shade of clinical non-color. My name is Mark Thorne. I knew this with a sudden crystalline certainty. I was 34 years old. I was an architect. I was engaged to a woman named Anna, a woman whose laugh sounded like wind chimes and whose hair smelled of lavender and sunshine, and I had been in a car accident. The memory came back in a jagged, violent flash, the screech of tires on wet asphalt, the blinding glare of headlights where they shouldn't be, the sickening concussive crunch of metal, and Anna's hand, suddenly weightless in my own. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. I tried to sit up, but my body refused to obey. It felt like a borrowed suit, heavy and disconnected. A soft, pleasant chime sounded somewhere in the room, and a woman appeared at my bedside. She was dressed in the same seamless white as the room, her features calm and symmetrical, her smile gentle but utterly unreadable. A name tag on her chest read, Elara, Cognitive Support. "Welcome back, Mark," she said, her voice as smooth and placid as a still lake. "It's good to see you awake. Please, do not be alarmed. You are safe." "Anna," I rasped, my throat feeling like sandpaper. "My fiancée. Was she—" Elara's smile didn't waver. "All will be made clear in time. For now, your focus must be on recovery. Your body has been dormant for a significant period. We must reestablish your baseline functions." Her words were like pillows, soft and designed to smother any hard, sharp questions. But one question pushed its way through the fog of my confusion. It felt like the most important question in the world, the anchor I needed to tether myself to reality. "How long?" I asked. "How long have I been out?" She took a small silver device from her pocket and ran it over my chest. A soft, green light pulsed from it. "Your vital signs are stabilizing nicely. That's a very positive indicator." "You didn't answer my question," I said, a flicker of irritation cutting through my weakness. "The concept of how long is relative, Mark," she said, her placid expression unwavering. "Temporal awareness can be disorienting after a significant trauma. Our priority is your cognitive and physiological well-being. We will address all your questions during your scheduled sessions." She tapped a small, almost invisible panel on the wall, and a tray slid out, holding a small bowl of a thick beige paste. "Your nutrient intake is critical at this stage. Please consume this. It has everything your body needs." I stared at the paste, then back at her. Her refusal to answer was so deliberate, so unnatural. It wasn't that she didn't know, it was that she wouldn't say. A new, colder fear began to snake its way around the hot core of my grief for Anna. "What year is it?" I asked, the words stark and loud in the quiet room. Elara's smile finally faltered, just for a fraction of a second. A tiny micro-expression of something. Annoyance? Pity? It was gone as quickly as it came. "That is not a productive question at this stage of your recovery, Mark. We find that focusing on the present moment yields the best results. Now please, your nutrients." She left the room as silently as she had entered. I was alone with the humming, the antiseptic smell, the beige paste, and a profound, terrifying sense of dislocation. It was the first day of my new life, a life in which the simple act of asking for the date was considered an unproductive question. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous, disorienting routine, a life lived in a white box. My physical strength returned with an almost unnatural speed. The nutrient paste, which tasted of nothing at all, seemed to repair my atrophied muscles at a cellular level. A man named Coyle, a physical therapist with the same calm, detached demeanor as Elara, would guide me through exercises that felt both alien and familiar. My body remembered how to move, but it was a distant, echoic memory. My real work, they told me, was in the cognitive sessions with Elara. We would sit in 2 white chairs in my white room, and she would ask me questions. She'd show me images on a tablet, a tree, a house, a dog, and ask me to identify them. At first, it felt like a test for a toddler, but the questions grew more complex, more personal. "Tell me about your childhood home, Mark," she'd say, her pen poised over a data pad. It was a 2-story colonial on Maple Street, I'd begin. A big oak tree in the front yard with a tire swing. She would listen patiently, and then she would gently correct me. Our records indicate it was a single-story ranch house on Elm Avenue. The tree was a sycamore. The memory of a tire swing is a common confabulation, a memory echo from a piece of media you likely consumed. It was maddening. Every detail I provided, every memory I held dear, was met with a calm, clinical refutation. They had a file on me, a complete and total record of the life of Mark Thorne. And it was all wrong. My father was a carpenter, not an accountant. My first pet was a cat named Mittens, not a goldfish named Bubbles. Anna and I met in a coffee shop during a rainstorm, not through a university-sponsored social mixer. The trauma of your accident was significant, Mark, Elara explained, her voice dripping with synthetic sympathy. It has created inconsistencies in your neural pathways. Think of your memory as a corrupted file. We are simply helping you restore the original uncorrupted data. We are helping you find yourself again. They were trying to gaslight me into a different life. But why? The more I clung to my own memories, the more they increased the frequency of the sessions. The more they insisted my past was a fiction. My grief for Anna was the one thing I held on to with a white-knuckled grip. It was my proof. My pain was real. Our love was real. They wanted to take that away, too. They called it emotional trauma, an anomaly to be corrected. The hospital, I had no other word for it, was a labyrinth of identical white corridors. There were no windows, not a single one. There was no way to see the sun, the sky, the outside world. There was no way to know if it was day or night. The soft, ambient light in the ceiling never changed. The staff, there were perhaps a dozen of them that I saw, moved with a silent, synchronized efficiency. They all wore the same white uniforms, the same placid smiles. They were like a hive of well-meaning, soulless insects. I never saw another patient. My repeated questions about this were met with the same frustratingly vague responses about individualized recovery protocols. The need to know the year became an obsession, a gnawing, desperate hunger. It was the key. It was the one piece of information that would unlock this whole nightmare. I tried every tactic I could think of. I tried pleading. I tried demanding. I tried feigning a breakdown. Nothing worked. They would simply sedate me with a small, painless injection, and I would wake up in my bed. The lost hours, a terrifying blank space in my mind. The first crack in their perfect white wall came in the form of a child's drawing. I had been permitted a recreational period in a room that was slightly larger than my own, filled with simple geometric objects that were meant to be stimulating. A maintenance panel in the wall was slightly ajar. My curiosity, the one part of me they hadn't managed to sedate, took over. I glanced at the camera in a corner, then quickly pried the panel open. Inside was a tangle of fiber optic cables, and tucked away in a corner, a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a drawing done in the clumsy, earnest style of a young child. It depicted a family of stick figures standing under a sky that was a violent, angry shade of orange-red, cracked with jagged black lines. Beneath the drawing, in shaky block letters, was a single phrase, "Before the broken sky." The broken sky. The phrase echoed in my mind, resonating with a deep, primal sense of dread. I tucked the drawing into the waistband of my uniform, my heart pounding. It was a piece of the puzzle. It was proof that something had happened, something terrible, something that they were trying to erase. That night, I faked taking my mandatory sedative. I palmed a small dissolvable tablet and hid it under my tongue until the orderly left. For the first time, I was awake when I was supposed to be asleep. The humming of the facility seemed louder in the artificial night. I slid out of bed and crept to my door. I had no plan, just a desperate need to see something other than the four white walls of my room. The corridor was empty, bathed in the same eternal soft light. I began to walk, my bare feet silent on a cool, seamless floor. I didn't know what I was looking for. A window, a clock, an exit. A soft, scraping sound from a room down the hall made me freeze. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath held tight in my chest. The door was slightly ajar. I peered through the crack. Inside, an old man was on his hands and knees, trying to pry up a floor tile with a spoon he must have stolen from a meal tray. He was gaunt and wild-eyed, his white hair a chaotic halo around his head. He saw me. His eyes widened in terror, and he scrambled back, holding the spoon like a weapon. "Shh," I whispered, holding up my hands. "I'm not one of them." He watched me for a long moment, his chest heaving. Then he seemed to make a decision. "You're new," he rasped, his voice dry and cracked. "The architect. I heard them talking." "My name is Mark," I said. "What is this place?" "This place is a lie," he said, his eyes darting toward the door. "They're trying to correct you, aren't they? Trying to make you forget. Don't let them. The memories are all we have left of what it was like. Before." "Before what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Before the broken sky." The old man's face went slack with shock. "Where did you hear that?" I showed him the drawing. He stared at it, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. "So, you're a digger," he said with a grim, humorless smile. "Like me. They call me Elias. They say I have advanced memory corruption. They say I'm a lost cause." "Elias," I said, "what year is it?" He let out a dry, rattling laugh. "That's the one thing you can't ask, the one thing they protect above all else, because the number is so big it would break your mind, because it would prove that everything you were, everyone you knew, is dust." "What happened?" I pleaded. "The accident." "There was no accident," Elias said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Not for most of us. We were chosen. The chrysalis protocol. They put us to sleep, the ones with the skills they thought they'd need to rebuild. Architects, doctors, engineers. We were supposed to be the seed of the new world. But something went wrong. The great silence, they call it. The world outside. It died, and we just kept sleeping for a long, long time." His words were the ravings of a madman, but they resonated with a terrifying, intuitive truth. This place wasn't a hospital. It was a bunker, a tomb, and we were the sleeping inhabitants being woken up one by one. "The ones running this place?" I asked. "Who are they?" "The Watchers," he said, his eyes wide. "The descendants of the original staff. They were born here, in the white. They've never seen the sun. They've never felt the rain. The world before is a myth to them, a dangerous, corrupted file, and we are the last living copies of that file. They're trying to wipe us clean, to make us like them before they integrate us." A chime sounded down the hall. Elias scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of terror. "You have to go. They're coming." He pressed the spoon into my hand. "Keep digging, architect," he whispered. "Don't let them win." I fled back to my room, my mind a maelstrom of horrifying new realities. I was a relic, an artifact from a dead world. My memories weren't corrupted. They were history, and the staff of this hospital were book burners trying to erase it. The fight for my past was no longer just a fight for my sanity. It was a fight for the memory of the entire human race. My relationship with my captors changed. I became a model patient. I pretended to accept their corrections. I parroted back the fabricated details of my new life. I ate the paste. I did the exercises. I smiled the same placid, empty smile as them. But beneath the surface, I was a saboteur. I was mapping the corridors in my mind, noting the patrol patterns of the orderlies, looking for a weakness in their perfect white prison. Elias and I began to communicate in secret. We would leave messages for each other behind the loose maintenance panels using a simple code we'd devised. He told me more about the facility, which he called the Janus Cradle. He told me there were different levels. We were in the integration wing. Below us was the hibernation bay, where hundreds, maybe thousands more were still sleeping. Above us was command, where the watchers lived, and somewhere there was an exit, a door to the outside world. Our goal was simple and insane. We had to get out. We had to see the broken sky for ourselves. Elias had a plan. He had been here for years and had managed to steal a low-level key card from a careless orderly. It wouldn't get us to command, but it might get us into the maintenance tunnels that honeycombed the facility. Our chance came during a system-wide diagnostic, a monthly event where the surveillance system was briefly rebooted, leaving small gaps in the camera coverage. The escape was a heart-stopping, terrifying blur. Under the cover of the reboot, we slipped out of our rooms and met in a deserted corridor. Elias swiped the card, and a nearly invisible seam in the wall hissed open, revealing a dark, narrow shaft. We plunged into it, the door hissing shut behind us, sealing us in the dusty, humming darkness of the cradle's guts. The tunnels were a different world. They were dark, cramped, and filled with the ghosts of old technology. Thick bundles of cables coated in a thick layer of gray dust snaked along the walls. Here and there, I saw logos and brand names that were achingly familiar, relics from my own time. General Electric, IBM, Panasonic. They were like fossils from a prehistoric age. We were moving through the skeleton of a dead world. We found a maintenance nexus, a small chamber where several tunnels converged. In the center was a dusty computer terminal, an ancient-looking desktop computer from the early 21st century. It was dead, of course, but beside it, on a shelf, was a stack of leather-bound logbooks. We opened the first one. The entries were handwritten, the ink faded, but still legible. The date on the first page made my breath catch in my throat. October 23rd, 2026. My accident had been in August of 2026. The logbook was the journal of Dr. Eris Thorne, the original director of the Janus Cradle. Not a cold young man who was my doctor, but his ancestor, his namesake. I read his words, my horror growing with every page. He wrote of a world teetering on the brink of collapse, not from war, but from something far more insidious. A series of cascading ecological disasters, a runaway greenhouse effect that was melting the poles and turning the skies a permanent, hazy red. He wrote of the chrysalis protocol, a desperate last-ditch effort to preserve a select group of humanity's best and brightest, to put them to sleep until the earth could heal itself. October 29th, 2026. The great silence has begun. All external communications went dark this morning. We are on our own now. The sky is the color of rust. May God have mercy on the souls of those we left behind. May 12th, 2048. The first of the cradle-born generation has come of age. They have never known a blue sky. They look upon us, the sleepers and the original staff, with a mixture of awe and pity. They call our world the before times. July 3rd, 2091. I am the last of the originals. The others are gone. The cradle-born run this place now. They are good, pragmatic people, but they fear the past. They see the memories of the sleepers not as a history to be preserved, but as a sickness to be cured. They have begun what they call cognitive correction. They believe they are doing a kindness, sparing the newly awakened the grief of a world that is gone forever. I have tried to argue with them, but to them I'm just a sad old man clinging to ghosts. The last entry was dated a week later. The writing was shaky, almost illegible. They are wrong. Memory is not a sickness. It is the only thing that proves we were ever alive at all. I have hidden these logs. Maybe one day one of the sleepers will find them. Maybe one of them will be strong enough to remember for us all. I looked up from the book, my eyes stinging. 100 years. 200. The number didn't matter. Elias was right. The world I knew, the world of Anna, of Maple Street, of blue skies and rainstorms, was not just gone. It was ancient history. A noise from the tunnel behind us made us jump. The sound of footsteps. They knew we were gone. We had to move. We grabbed the logbooks and plunged deeper into the labyrinth. We were lost for what felt like days. We survived on the emergency nutrient packs we found in a forgotten storage closet. The Watchers were hunting us. We could hear their calm, dispassionate voices echoing through the tunnels, calling our names, assuring us that they only wanted to help. It was during our flight that we stumbled upon the nursery. It was a large circular room, filled with rows upon rows of cryogenic pods, far smaller than the ones in the hibernation bay. These were for children, but the most horrifying part was a large glass-walled observation room. Inside, a group of cradle-born children, no older than 5 or 6, were sitting at desks, watching a large screen. On the screen was a pastoral scene from the before times, a family having a picnic in a sunny green field. "Look, children," a soft, synthesized voice was saying, "this is a memory echo. It is a simulation of the corrupted data that the sleepers carry. See how bright the light is? It is unnatural. See how the people laugh? It is a symptom of emotional dysregulation. We must be grateful for the calm, for the balance that we have achieved." They weren't just erasing our memories. They were inoculating their own children against them, teaching them to fear the very concept of our world, to fear happiness, to fear the sun. Elias, his mind already fragile, couldn't take it. He let out a strangled, grief-stricken cry and collapsed, sobbing. The sound alerted our pursuers. They were on us in seconds. They dragged Elias away, his eyes locking with mine in a final, desperate plea. "Remember," his eyes said, "I managed to escape back into the maze of tunnels. I was alone again, hunted, with the weight of a dead world on my shoulders. I knew I couldn't stay in the tunnels forever. My only chance was to go up, to get to command, to find the door. Elias had managed to slip me his stolen key card before they took him. It was a desperate gamble, but I found a sealed access ladder that his card miraculously opened. It led straight up, into the heart of the beast. The command level was a stark contrast to the rest of the cradle. The walls were a dark, polished gray. The air was warmer. This was where the watchers lived. I crept through the corridors, my heart in my throat. I saw their living quarters, as Spartan and minimalist as my own room. I saw their food synthesizers, their communal learning centers. It was a life of perfect, sterile, passionless order. I found my way to the central control room. It was a vast, circular chamber. The walls were a single panoramic screen, currently displaying the vital signs of the thousands of souls still sleeping in the hibernation bay. In the center of the room, a young man was sitting at a console. It was the man I knew as Dr. Eris. He wasn't in his white uniform. He was wearing a simple gray tunic. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Mark Thorne," he said, his voice as calm as ever. "The architect. I must admit, you have been our most resilient subject." "Where is Elias?" I demanded, my voice raw. "He has been returned to hibernation," Aris said. "His memory file was too deeply corrupted. Perhaps in a few more generations our techniques will be advanced enough to help him, to cure him." "He wasn't sick," I snarled. "He was remembering a world of chaos, of pain, of uncontrolled emotions that led to its own destruction," Aris countered, his gaze unwavering. "We are offering you a gift, a second chance, a life of purpose, of balance. You can help us build the new world, but first you must let go of the old one." "My world had love," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It had art. It had Anna." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in Aris's eyes. It wasn't pity. It was a deep, almost academic curiosity. "Anna," he mused. "The primary emotional trauma, the core of the corruption. Her file is fascinating. The depth of the codependent pathology is unlike anything we have on record." He gestured to the main screen. The vital signs were replaced by a photograph. It was a picture of me and Anna on a beach, laughing, the sun in our hair. The sight of it was a physical blow. "What you call love, we call a destabilizing fixation," Aris said. "It is the very thing we have worked for centuries to eliminate. The world outside is stable now, healed, but it is a delicate, fragile piece. We cannot risk contaminating it with the diseases of the past, with grief, with rage, with love." "I want to see it," I said, my voice a whisper. "I want to see the sky." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "You are resilient. Perhaps you are strong enough to see the truth and accept it. Perhaps then you will understand the kindness we are offering." He pressed a sequence of panels on his console. A section of the far wall began to retract, revealing a massive circular airlock door. "This is the main egress," Aris said. "It has not been opened in over 300 years. He led me towards it, my legs feeling like lead. I was about to see it, the broken sky, the world after the great silence. "What year is it, Aris?" I asked one last time. He paused, his hand on the final locking mechanism. "By your old calendar," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "The year is 2571, 445 years. The number was so vast, so meaningless, it didn't even register as a shock. It was just a sound. The great door hissed open. A strange, pale light, tinged with a faint violet hue, spilled into the room. A wind, cool and smelling of damp earth and strange alien blossoms washed over me. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, and looked out upon the world of 2571. It wasn't a wasteland. It wasn't a desert. It was a garden, a strange, beautiful, and utterly alien garden. The sky wasn't broken. It was a soft, perpetual twilight of lavender and rose, a permanent global aurora caused by the altered composition of the atmosphere. The vegetation was lush and bizarre, forests of glowing phosphorescent fungi and trees with leaves of spun silver. In the distance, the ruins of an ancient city, my city, were almost completely consumed by this new, vibrant nature, the skeletal remains of skyscrapers draped in iridescent moss. And the people. There were people moving through the glowing forests. They were tall and slender, their skin almost translucent, their eyes large and dark. They were the cradle-born who had left generations ago to resettle the surface. They were beautiful, peaceful. They moved with a slow, graceful purpose, their faces calm and serene. They were the children of the Watchers, the end result of a program to engineer a new, balanced humanity. And I was a monster, a relic from the age of chaos, a carrier of the emotional plague. The hospital wasn't a prison to keep me in. It was a quarantine to protect them from me. Aris stood beside me. "This is what we have built," he said, his voice filled with a quiet, profound pride. "A world without pain, without grief, without the destructive passions that burned your world to the ground. You can be a part of this, Mark. All you have to do is let her go. Let Anna go." I looked out at the strange, beautiful, silent world. A world without pain, a world without Anna's laugh, a world where the memory of her was a disease. I thought of the logbook. Memory is not a sickness. It is the only thing that proves we were ever alive. I had turned to Aris. His face was a mask of calm expectation. He believed he had won. He believed that seeing this new, perfect world would make me surrender my broken, chaotic past. "No," I said, the word feeling like the first real thing I had said since I woke up. I didn't wait for his reaction. I turned and walked out of the airlock, down the ramp, and into the strange violet twilight of the new earth. I was a ghost, a man out of time, a walking museum of dead emotions. I was utterly, completely alone. But for the first time since I had opened my eyes in that white room, I was free. I didn't know where I was going or what I would do. I only knew that I would not forget. I would carry the memory of Anna, of our world, into this silent, peaceful future. I would be the sickness. I would be the chaos. I would be the ghost that haunted their perfect, passionless garden. I would remember for them all. That's where this story ends. Let's continue with the next. The calendar inside the abandoned house won't turn past one date. The listing was absurd. Havenwood Manor, historic charm, furnished rooms, 30 night. Posted on a forgotten corner of a budget travel forum. Maya, my college roommate, turned fellow penniless wanderer after graduation, scattered us like dandelion seeds, saw it as salvation. "Jessa, look," she'd said, shoving her cracked phone screen under my nose in the sticky booth of a roadside diner. "It's practically free. 2 nights near Lake Champlain. We can shoot that misty lake footage for our portfolio. Real, The Shining vibes, but affordable." She'd grinned, that familiar spark back in her tired eyes after weeks of rejection emails from galleries. I should have said no. I remembered the guest ledger at Willow Creek Lodge, the dragging thing in the concrete tunnel, the red eyes in the Holloway Zoo cages. But Maya's desperation mirrored my own empty bank account, and the promise of cheap isolation felt like oxygen. The owner, caretaker, Silas Thorne, a name that sent a familiar chill down my spine, communicated only through clipped texts. Payment was cash only, left in a rusted lockbox nailed to the rotting porch post. No photos beyond a single blurry shot of sagging eaves, just coordinates. It felt like a trap. We went anyway. The drive up the overgrown lane was a gauntlet of warning signs nature provided. Ancient oaks, heavy with Spanish moss like funeral veils, scraped the roof of Maya's battered hatchback. GPS died miles back, replaced by a gnawing sense of isolation that thickened with every mile. The coordinates led us not to a grand manor, but to a decaying Victorian corpse swallowed by the wilderness. Havenwood Manor wasn't just abandoned, it was being actively digested by the forest. Its once proud gingerbread trim was rotted lace. Peeling paint hung in strips like flayed skin, and the wrap-around porch sagged violently, several planks missing entirely, revealing the dark maw beneath. An oppressive silence hung over the place, broken only by the drone of insects and the unsettling drip, drip, drip of water from a broken gutter onto the mossy steps. The air smelled thickly of wet earth, decay, and something else, faintly sweet, like forgotten peaches left to rot in a damp cellar. Maya killed the engine, the sudden quiet pressing in. "Whoa," she breathed, not with awe, but with dawning unease. She fumbled for her camera, the click unnaturally loud. I just stared at the peeling front door, the intricate floral pattern barely visible beneath grime. The lockbox held a single, heavy iron key. It felt cold and unnaturally heavy in my hand. Inside, the smell intensified. Mildew, dust thick enough to taste, and that cloying sweetness now underscored by a sharper tang, like old pennies. The grand foyer was a tomb. Weak gray light filtered through the boarded windows, illuminating swirling dust motes dancing in the beams. A massive staircase swept upwards, its banister broken in places. Velvet drapes hung in tattered shreds. Furniture lay overturned, shrouded in ghostly white sheets that seemed to shift slightly in the stale air currents. The floorboards groaned a chorus of complaints under our tentative steps, the sound echoing unnaturally in the cavernous space. My boots crunched on broken glass near a small writing desk in the corner. On it sat a thick, leather-bound ledger. Its cover was cracked and stiff. Against all reason, I opened it. The pages were brittle, covered in elegant faded script, listing names and dates spanning the 1890s to the late 1970s. The ink was sepia brown. The last entry, dated October 30th, 1984, read, Silas Thorne, permanent caretaker. Below it, the page was blank, until I turned it. There, in the same faded brown ink, as if written moments before we arrived, were two new lines. Maya Chen, East Wing, Room 2. Jessa Reed, East Wing, Room 3. My blood turned to ice. Maya, look at this. My voice sounded thin, reedy. She peered over my shoulder, her earlier excitement evaporating. What the hell? That's impossible. That ink's old. And how did it know our names? Our rooms? She flipped back frantically. All the other entries were decades old. This was fresh, too fresh. The air in the foyer seemed to thicken, the dust motes slowing their dance. A low, almost subsonic hum vibrated through the floorboards, setting my teeth on edge. It wasn't machinery. It felt alive. Our rooms were down a long shadowed corridor on the second floor. The stairs groaned like dying things beneath us. The hallway wallpaper, once opulent floral patterns, was peeling away in long curling strips, revealing damp, black-stained plaster beneath. Water stains bloomed like Rorschach blots on the ceiling. Room 2's door stuck, the wood swollen with humidity. Maya finally shouldered it open with a splintering crack. Inside was marginally better than the foyer. A dusty four-poster bed, a nightstand, missing a drawer, a window overlooking the overgrown rose garden, now just a tangle of thorns and skeletal stalks. The air was colder here, smelling sharply of damp wool and that persistent, cloying sweetness. Maya dropped her bag. Okay, weird guest book aside, cheap is cheap, right? We'll shoot the lake at dawn, blow this place by noon. She forced a grin, but it didn't reach her eyes. She kept glancing towards the open door, down the dark hallway. My room, room 3, was identical, just across the hall, the same pervasive chill, the same smell. The bed frame was rusted, the mattress mildewed but intact. I dropped my pack, the sound echoing too loudly. I tried my phone, no signal. Maya's camera wouldn't connect to her phone. The Wi-Fi password Silas Thorne had texted Havenwood 1884 yielded nothing but error messages. We were truly off-grid, truly alone, or so we thought. Dinner was protein bars eaten in near silence on the creaking porch steps, watching the last bruised light of dusk bleed out over the skeletal trees, the forest sounds. Crickets, distant owls, felt muffled, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The manor loomed behind us, a hulking silhouette against the twilight sky, its blank windows seeming to watch us. That subsonic hum was fainter out here, but still present, a vibration in the marrow of my bones. Sleep was impossible. The cold seeped through my sleeping bag on the mildewed mattress. Every groan of the old building, the settling timber, the wind whistling through unseen cracks, sounded like deliberate footsteps. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard it. Faint at first, coming from the hallway. Scritch, 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 like fingernails, slow and deliberate, dragging along the peeling wallpaper. It stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, heart hammering against my ribs. Silence. Then a soft, wet click, like a throat being cleared. It lingered for a long minute. Then the scraping. Sound moved down the hall, stopping outside Maya's door. I heard her muffled curse, the rustle of her sitting up. The sound didn't resume. It just waited. I didn't sleep again that night. I watched the sliver of moonlight on the floorboards, straining my ears until dawn painted the sky a sickly gray. Morning brought no relief, only a deeper unease. The air felt heavier, the silence more watchful. Maya looked pale, shadows like bruises under her eyes. It was at my door, she whispered over instant coffee brewed on a camping stove in the foyer. Just standing there, breathing. I swear I heard it breathing. She wouldn't elaborate. We decided to explore, to find something, anything, to film, to prove we'd been here, to shake off the dread. The lower floors were a maze of decay, a ballroom with a collapsed chandelier buried in plaster dust, a dining room where chairs lay scattered like bones after a feast, a kitchen with rusted appliances and shelves coated in thick gray sludge. The smell of decay was strongest here, that metallic sweet odor almost overwhelming. In a small study off the library, we found it. Not a ledger this time, a calendar. An old-fashioned paper calendar the kind with a wooden frame and thick pages you tear off each day. It hung crookedly on the wall beside a dusty globe. The page showing was for October 1984, and it was stuck, permanently stuck on. October 31st, 1984. Maya reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the page. "Halloween," she murmured. "Creepy." She tried to tear it off. The paper didn't budge. It felt fused to the backing. She tugged harder. Nothing. Weird glue? She grabbed the top edge and pulled with both hands. The wooden frame groaned, but the page remained stubbornly fixed, the date glaring up at us. October 31st, 1984. "Let me try," I said, my unease deepening. I gripped the page firmly. It felt strangely warm. I yanked. My fingers slipped. The page didn't tear. It didn't even crease. It was like trying to tear a stone. "It won't move," I whispered, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. Maya frowned, pulling out her multi-tool. She slid the small blade carefully under the top edge of the page. It wouldn't slide in. The gap between the page and the backing was sealed shut, as if welded by time and something else. She pressed harder. The blade bent. "What is this?" she muttered, frustration warring with fear. That's when the whispering started, not from one direction, but from everywhere. From the walls, the dripping ceiling, the very air. A chorus of faint, overlapping voices, too quiet to make out words, but thick with a terrible longing and a chilling hunger. It wasn't English. It sounded older, wrong. The subsonic hum surged, vibrating the floorboards under my feet, making my teeth ache. The light from the grimy window seemed to dim. "Maya," I hissed, my voice tight with panic. "We need to go, now." She didn't turn. She was focused on the calendar, sliding her fingernail along the stubborn seam. "Just one more try, Jessa. This is weird. This is real." She leaned closer. I grabbed her arm. She yelped, swinging around. Her multi-tool clattered to the dusty floorboards. Her face was ashen. "Did you hear that?" she breathed. The whispering had stopped. The hum had died. But the silence that followed was worse. It was the silence of something holding its breath, waiting. From the darkness of the hallway behind us came a new sound, a slow, wet dragging, like something heavy with no legs being pulled across the soaked carpet. Schlick, schlick, schlick. We didn't wait to see it. We ran. We stumbled back through the library, past the grand staircase, back into the marginally less oppressive gloom of the foyer. We slammed the heavy wooden door to the study shut, leaning against it, gasping. The dragging sound stopped at the other side. Then a single, soft thump against the wood, like a head leaning against it, waiting. We barricaded ourselves in the foyer with overturned furniture, a futile gesture against whatever was out there, but it made us feel less exposed. Hours crawled by. The weak daylight bled away, replaced by the deeper shadows of late afternoon. The whispering started again, not in the study this time, but seeming to emanate from the walls of the foyer itself. Faint, insistent, names. I thought I heard my own name woven into the sibilant chorus. "Jessa! Jessa! Stay!" Maya paced like a caged animal, jumping at every creak. "We can't stay here tonight," she said, her voice raw. "We drive out now. Screw the car getting stuck. We walk." But the forest outside the boarded windows looked different at dusk. The trees seemed closer, their branches reaching, and the whispering, it was getting louder, clearer, no longer just names, phrases. Warm beds, hot supper, check in, stay forever. That's when I saw it on the writing desk. The ledger lay open. I hadn't touched it since last night, but the page had turned. Below our names, written in that same faded brown ink, but looking wetter, darker, as if the pen had just lifted. Check out? Never. Maya saw it too. She made a small broken sound in her throat. "It's not letting us leave," she whispered. "The rooms, they're not for sleeping, they're for keeping." The dragging sound started again, not from the study door, from the staircase. Schlick, thud, schlick, thud. Something was coming down, slowly, deliberately. The whispering rose to a fever pitch, a cacophony of desperate, overlapping voices filling the foyer, seeming to come from the very dust in the air. "Guests, new guests, signed a book, signed a book." The subsonic hum returned, stronger now, vibrating the glass in the remaining window panes, making the chandelier remnants tremble. Panic, pure and blinding, seized me. "The kitchen!" I yelled over the din, grabbing Maya's arm. "Back way out!" We scrambled towards the service corridor, past the dark maw of the dining room. The dragging sound was on the main floor now, accompanied by a new sound. A wet, rattling breath, like lungs full of stagnant water. It was close, too close. We burst into the kitchen. The back door was there, warped but intact. Hope flared. I grabbed the rusty handle, yanked. It didn't budge, seized shut. Maya threw her shoulder against it. Nothing. The dragging sound stopped. The wet breathing filled the small space. I turned slowly. It wasn't Silas Thorne. It wasn't human. It was a shape formed from the decay of the place itself. Shadows clung to it like tattered rags. Its form shifted, sometimes tall and gaunt like the photographs in the parlor, sometimes hunched and dragging, its lower half seeming to melt into the filthy kitchen floor made of the same black mold and wet plaster and rust that coated the pipes. Its face. There was no face. Just a suggestion of features in the swirling darkness, 2 points of dull, ember-like light where eyes should be. It held no weapon. It didn't need one. The air around it shimmered with cold and that cloying, sweet rot stench. Its mouth opened, a ragged tear in the shadow stuff, and the whispering poured out, not from its throat, but from the walls, the floor, the very pipes. "Welcome home, rooms prepared, check in, check in, check in." Maya screamed, not a shout of fear, but a raw animal sound of utter terror. She turned and fled back towards the dining room, towards the front of the manor. I followed, stumbling over debris. The thing didn't pursue. It just stood there in the kitchen doorway, a well of darkness, the whispering following us like a physical thing, clinging to our backs. "Stay. Sign the book. Your names are there. You belong here now. Check in." We burst back into the foyer. Maya didn't hesitate. She sprinted for the main entrance, the grand double doors. She grabbed the handles, threw her weight against them. They groaned, buckled slightly, but held fast, boarded shut from the outside. She pounded on the wood, screaming for help into the encroaching night. "Let us out! Please, let us out!" I looked back towards the kitchen corridor. The shadow figure hadn't moved. It just stood at the edge of the dining room, watching, waiting. The whispering had subsided to a low, persistent thrum, like flies buzzing in a corpse. "Check in." It seemed to breathe with the building itself. Then I saw the ledger. It lay on the writing desk, open. The page had turned again. Below, check out, never. 2 new lines had appeared, the ink glistening wetly, dark as fresh blood. Maya Chin, East Wing, Room 2, checked in. Jessa Reed, East Wing, Room 3, checked in. As I watched frozen, the ink on my name seemed to pulse. A wave of crushing fatigue, deeper than any I'd ever known, washed over me. The fear was still there, screaming in my mind, but my body felt leaden, impossibly heavy. The whispering softened, became soothing, almost maternal. Rest now. It breathed from the walls. Your room is ready, warm bed, safe. The image of that mildewed mattress in room 3 filled my mind, not as a place of horror, but as a haven. A place to finally stop running, to stop being afraid. The cold seeping into my bones didn't feel like threat anymore. It felt like cool sheets. The sweet rot smell was just the scent of old wood, of home. Maya had stopped pounding. She stood slumped against the doors, her face pressed to the wood. She turned slowly. Her eyes were wide, but the panic was gone, replaced by a terrible, vacant calm. She looked at me, a small, serene smile touching her lips. "It's okay, Jessa," she said, her voice dreamy, distant. "The bed, it's so soft. Come see." She turned back to the doors, not trying to open them, just leaning against them as if listening to a comforting voice on the other side. "Check in," the walls sighed. The fatigue pulled at me like chains. The whispering wasn't in the air anymore. It was inside my skull, gentle, insistent. "Your name is written. You belong. Rest." My legs gave way. I sank to my knees on the dusty foyer floor. The shadow figure was gone from the dining room doorway, but I felt its presence everywhere, in the groan of the floorboards, in the drip of the gutter outside, in the slow, inevitable decay of the walls. It wasn't a monster. It was the place. Havenwood Manor, hungry, patient, and it had us. I didn't fight it. The weight was too much. The promise of rest too sweet. I crawled, not towards the exit, but towards the stairs. Each step groaned, but the sound was familiar now, comforting, like the manor was welcoming me home. Halfway up, I looked back. Maya was no longer by the doors. She was walking slowly, peacefully, down the dark hallway towards room 2. She didn't look back. I reached the second-floor landing. The hallway stretched before me, the peeling wallpaper seeming to ripple in the gloom. Room 3's door stood slightly ajar. Moonlight, cold and clear now, streamed through the gap, illuminating dust motes dancing like stars. It looked warm inside, safe. My room? My name was written in a book. I belonged here. The whispering was a lullaby in my veins. "Check in," it breathed, not from outside, but from within the very wood of the doorframe. "Check in." I pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I'd left it, mildewed mattress on a rusted frame, the window showing the moonlit tangle of the dead rose garden. But the air was warmer. The smell of decay was gone, replaced by a faint scent of lavender and old paper. On the bed, the mildewed sheet was gone. In its place lay a single, crisp white sheet. Invitation, welcome, home. I stepped inside. The door swung shut behind me with a soft, final click. The whispering didn't stop. It just changed. It wasn't urging me anymore. It was celebrating. A chorus of dry, papery voices, the sound of pages turning in a vast, unseen ledger. Guests arrived, rooms filled, names secured. It came from the walls, the floor, the window pane, from the rust on the bed frame, from the dust on the sill. Havenwood Manor was no longer silent. It was alive, and it was satisfied. I didn't get into the bed. I just stood by the window looking out at the moonlit wilderness that had swallowed the manor whole. The forest wasn't silent anymore. I could hear it breathing, a deep, slow rhythm that matched the pulse of the manor itself. The subsonic hum was gone. In its place was a profound, ancient quiet, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of an owl, a normal sound. But I knew better. That owl's cry echoed the whispering. "Check in," it seemed to say. "Check in." I turned from the window. The room was darker now. The moonlight had dimmed. But I could see the calendar. It hung on the wall beside this bed, where no calendar had been before. The page was still stuck, still showing. October 31st, 1984. But now, below the date, in that same glistening wet ink, were two new lines. Maya Chen, checked in, 1984. Jessa Reed, checked in, 1984. My name glowed faintly on the page, the ink shimmering with that same dark warmth. Below it, the year wasn't 2026 anymore. It was 1984. Waiting. The checkout date remained. Never. The door to the hallway was gone. The walls had subtly shifted, the floral pattern of the wallpaper now forming intricate, spiraling patterns that seemed to draw the eye inward, downward. The air grew warmer, heavier. The scent of lavender deepened, masking the underlined sweetness of decay. It wasn't a room anymore. It was a cell, a beautifully appointed tomb. My tomb. Maya's door was gone too, just seamless, whispering wallpaper where room 2 had been. I didn't scream. The urge was there, buried deep, but the manner soothed it away like a mother calming a child. "Rest," the walls breathed. "You are safe now. You are home." My body felt lighter, yet utterly immobile. My thoughts slowed, thickened like honey. The memory of the outside world, the hatchback, the diner, the life before the coordinates, began to fray at the edges, dissolving like smoke. It felt distant, unimportant, a dream. This was real, the warmth, the quiet, the deep, resonant presence of Havenwood Manor settling around me like a comfortable blanket. My eyes grew heavy. The glowing ink of my name on the calendar was the last thing I saw before the darkness pulled me under. Not sleep, not death. Something in between, a permanent check-in. The last coherent thought that flickered before the warmth consumed me wasn't fear. It was a terrible, seductive understanding. Havenwood Manor wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was the ghost. A hungry ghost of a place, starved for life, for warmth, for the vibrant energy of guests long gone. It fed on the fear, yes, but more deeply, it fed on the surrender, on the acceptance of its embrace. Silas Thorne hadn't been the caretaker. He'd been the first course, the appetizer. The decades of silence weren't abandonment. They were digestion, waiting, starving. And now fresh names were on the list, warm bodies to fill the cold rooms, new voices to add to the whispering chorus that sustained the ancient rotting heart of the manor. Maya's serene smile flashed in my mind. She was already part of it, already singing with the walls. As the final threads of my old self dissolved into the pervasive warmth, into the soft, insistent whisper that was now my own breath, my own blood, I understood the true horror. It wasn't the dragging thing, or the scratched walls, or even the names appearing in the ledger. It was the relief, the awful, seductive comfort of giving up, of letting the hunger of the place fill the hollow spaces inside you. The manor didn't just take your life, it took your wanting to leave. It made you want to stay forever. The last thing I felt, as the warmth became all-encompassing, as the whispering became my own heartbeat, was the smooth, cool texture of the calendar's wooden frame under my vanishing hand, and the profound, chilling certainty that echoed not just in the dead air of room 3, but in the very stones of Havenwood Manor, in the rustling leaves of the devouring forest, in the silent, patient earth beneath it all. We weren't trapped. We were welcome. We were home. And the guest list, written in ink that never faded, in names that never left, would never ever be complete. They were still checking in, always on October 31st, and now so were we. The calendar wouldn't turn. It couldn't, because time in this hungry place had stopped forever. And that's where this story ends. Let's move on to the next one. The woods behind the cabin weren't just woods, they were an ocean. A deep, green, silent ocean of ancient pines and forgotten maples, and I had been drowning in it for 3 months. My wife, Eleanor, had always called me a creature of the city, a man who found comfort in the predictable grid of streets and the constant reassuring hum of other people's lives. She was right. The silence of the forest was a physical thing, a pressure against my eardrums, a constant reminder of the much larger silence she had left behind in my life. I came here to write, or at least that was the official story, the one I told my concerned friends and my well-meaning but utterly bewildered parents. I was a novelist, and novelists, according to cliché, are supposed to retreat to rustic cabins to wrestle with their muse, but my muse had died in a sterile beige hospital room 6 months ago. Her final breath, a quiet, unassuming sigh that had somehow sucked all the oxygen out of my world. I didn't come here to write. I came here to disappear. My name is Thomas Weaver, and I was a ghost haunting the life I had failed to save. My days were a featureless landscape of aimless wandering. I would walk for hours, following deer trails that petered out into nothing, my feet sinking into a thick carpet of pine needles and decaying leaves. The forest was a living, breathing archive of death and rebirth, a cycle I could observe but no longer feel a part of. It was on one of these walks, pushing deeper into the woods than I ever had before, that I found it. I was following the ghost of a creek, a dry, rocky bed that snaked its way through a particularly dense thicket of ironwood trees. The air grew still and heavy, the usual chorus of bird song and insect chatter fading into an unnerving silence. And then I saw it, standing in a small, unnaturally perfect clearing. It was a door, not the ruin of a door, not the last remnant of some long-forgotten homestead. It was a perfect, freestanding door, unconnected to any wall, any foundation, any structure at all. It was made of a dark, almost black wood, polished to a deep, lustrous sheen that seemed to drink the dappled sunlight. It was set in a simple, unadorned frame of the same wood, which simply rose from the forest floor and ended, a perfect, impossible rectangle of civilization in the heart of the wild. The doorknob was a heavy, ornate thing of tarnished brass, fashioned in the shape of a sleeping serpent devouring its own tail. My first thought was that it was an art installation, some strange surrealist project left to be reclaimed by nature. I walked around it. The back was as solid and seamless as the front. There were no hinges visible, no seams in the frame. It was a solid, impossible object, as out of place as a cathedral in the middle of the desert. I reached out and touched the wood. It was cool and smooth, vibrating with a low, almost subsonic hum that I felt more in my teeth than in my fingertips. I gripped the brass serpent and turned. Nothing. The knob wouldn't budge. I pushed, then pulled. The door was as solid and immovable as the ancient bedrock beneath my feet. It became my obsession, my secret pilgrimage. Every day I would walk to the clearing and visit the door. I would sit on a fallen log and just look at it, this beautiful, maddening enigma. It was a focal point for my grief, a perfect metaphor for my own life, a locked door to a place I could no longer enter. I would talk to it, my voice a raw, quiet whisper in the silent clearing. I would tell it about Eleanor, about the way she would bite her lip when she was concentrating, about the smell of her hair after a summer rain. I was a man confessing his sins to a wooden god, and the forest was my silent, indifferent cathedral. The first time it opened, it was an accident. I was in town, a small, weary-looking place called Black Creek, picking up supplies at the general store. The woman behind the counter, a kindly, grandmotherly type named Martha, was talking in hushed tones to another customer. Old Mr. Abernathy, a man who had lived in the valley his entire 94 years, had passed away peacefully in his sleep the night before. I didn't think much of it. It was the kind of sad, inevitable news that is the lifeblood of any small town. But when I returned to the cabin, the compulsion to see the door was overwhelming. I walked through the woods, my mind a numb, gray fog. As I stepped into the clearing, I felt a change in the air. The low, humming vibration was more intense, a palpable thrum that seemed to make the very leaves on the trees tremble. On a whim, born of nothing more than the ritualistic habit of my daily visits, I walked up to the door and placed my hand on the brass serpent. I turned. This time it moved. With a soft, sighing click, the latch disengaged. The door swung inward, silently, revealing not the forest behind it, but an impossible, shimmering darkness. It wasn't the darkness of a moonless night. It was a deeper, more absolute black, a velvet void that seemed to absorb all light and sound. And from it, a scent wafted out, a scent that hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was the smell of cinnamon, old books, and Eleanor's favorite Earl Grey tea. It was the smell of Sunday mornings in our tiny, sun-drenched city apartment. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild, terrified bird. This was impossible, a hallucination, a trick of my grief-addled mind. But the smell was so real, so painfully, perfectly real. I took a hesitant step forward and peered inside. I saw nothing, just the endless, soft black. But I could feel it, the warmth of the morning sun on the worn wooden floorboards, the weight of our old patchwork quilt, the faint, distant sound of traffic 5 stories below. And then I heard it, her laughter, a light, airy sound that had been the soundtrack to the best years of my life. It wasn't a memory of her laughter. It was the thing itself, a perfect, resonant echo in the impossible space beyond the door. Tears streamed down my face. I took another step, my hand outstretched, wanting to plunge into that perfect sensory memory, to wrap myself in it, to drown in it. But a sudden, primal fear, a deep, instinctual sense of self-preservation, held me back. This was wrong. This was a violation of the fundamental laws of the universe. I stumbled back, my heel catching on a root. I fell hard, scrambling away from the open door like a frightened animal. As soon as I was outside the immediate circle of the clearing, the door swung shut with the same soft, final click. I scrambled to my feet and rushed back to it, grabbing the knob, pushing, pulling. It was locked, solid, immovable. The smell was gone. The feeling of warmth was gone. The sound of her laughter was gone. I was alone again in the cold, silent woods. It took me 2 days to make the connection. 2 days of frantic, sleepless obsession, replaying the event in my mind over and over. The door, Mr. Abernathy, the timing. It was a hypothesis so insane, so monstrous, that my rational mind rejected it outright. But the part of me that had seen the impossible, that had smelled a ghost of a perfect Sunday morning, knew it was the truth. The door only opened when someone died. The thought was a venomous, seductive whisper in the back of my mind. I became a ghoul, a vulture of sorrow. I bought a small, cheap police scanner, the kind used by local news reporters and morbid hobbyists. I would sit in my cabin for hours, the static hissing, listening for the coded language of tragedy. A car crash on the interstate, a heart attack at the diner, a hunting accident in the state forest. My grief for Eleanor became twisted, perverted into a hungry, desperate anticipation for the grief of others. I was a man praying for funerals, not so that I could mourn, but so that I could get my fix. Each time a death was reported, I would race to the clearing, my heart pounding with a sick, shameful excitement. And each time the door would be waiting, the low hum, the soft click, the welcoming darkness, and each time the memory would be different. A fatal car crash on Highway 17 brought me the memory of our first date, the taste of the cheap red wine we'd shared, the feeling of a hand, nervous and electric, in my own. The death of a hiker who'd fallen from Black Creek Falls gave me the scent of the salty air on our honeymoon in Maine, the sound of the waves crashing against rocks. The door was a curator of my happiest moments, a library of my lost life, and the price of admission was a stranger's death. I was an addict. The real world became a gray, washed-out waiting room, a place I had to endure between my visits to the vibrant, perfect world beyond the door. The novel I was supposed to be writing lay untouched. I stopped answering calls from my family. I grew thin, my eyes taking on a haunted, feverish glint. The townspeople in Black Creek began to look at me differently, their friendly smiles replaced with wary, cautious glances. I was the strange, gaunt man from the city who bought too much canned food and seemed to be listening to something no one else could hear. And then the deaths stopped. For 3 weeks, the scanner was silent. The town of Black Creek, with a stubborn, infuriating resilience, refused to offer up a sacrifice. The door remained locked. I was in withdrawal, and it was an agony far worse than the initial raw grief. The memories, which had been a comfort, were now a torment, a paradise I had been exiled from. My grief, which I had thought I was processing, came roaring back, amplified and distorted. The door hadn't been healing me. It had been enabling me, keeping me in a state of suspended animation, a perfect, preserved stasis of sorrow. I became desperate. I would spend all day at the door, pleading with it, sometimes screaming at it until my throat was raw, my fists bloody from pounding on the unyielding wood. The silence of the forest mocked me. It was during one of these desperate, frantic visits that I found the bird. It was a small brown sparrow lying at the base of the door, its wing bent at an unnatural angle. It was still alive, its tiny chest heaving, its black, bead-like eyes filled with a silent animal terror. A thought, ugly and reptilian, slithered into my mind. I tried to push it away, but it was too strong. The addiction was too strong. I told myself it was a mercy. The bird was dying anyway. It was a kindness. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Its tiny heart beat a frantic, terrified rhythm against my palm. I closed my eyes, and with a quick, brutal twist, I broke its neck. The fragile bones snapped with a sound that was horrifyingly loud in the silent clearing. I stood there for a long moment, the small, warm, limp body in my hand, a wave of self-loathing so profound it almost buckled my knees. I had crossed a line. I had taken a life, however small, for my own selfish, pathetic need. With a trembling hand, I reached for the doorknob. It turned. The door swung open. The scent of cinnamon and old books washed over me. But it was different this time. Fainter. The feeling of warmth was gone, replaced by a subtle, creeping chill. And Eleanor's laughter. It had a thin, brittle quality, an echo of an echo. It was a flawed, corrupted memory, a cheap imitation. I stumbled back, the dead bird falling from my numb fingers. I understood then. The door was not just a passive gateway. It was a connoisseur. It was a parasite that fed on death, and the quality of its meal mattered. The peaceful, natural death of an old man, the sudden, tragic death of a stranger, these were one thing. The deliberate, cold-blooded killing of an innocent creature was another. The door had opened, but it was punishing me. It was telling me that the price for a perfect memory was higher. It wanted a more significant sacrifice. The next few months were a descent into a private, methodical madness. I became a hunter. I started with small animals, squirrels caught in traps, a raccoon by the side of the road that I mercifully put out of its misery with a tire iron. Each time, I would justify it, a mercy, a kindness. And each time, I would run to the door, a desperate, pathetic supplicant, and each time, the memory of Eleanor would be a little more faded, a little more distorted, a little more soulless. The door was starving, and I was feeding it scraps. It was making me hungrier, more desperate. The day I found the deer was the day I knew I was lost. It had been caught in a barbed wire fence at the edge of my property, its leg torn and bloody, its eyes wide with panic and pain. It was a large, beautiful buck, full of a powerful wildlife force, and my first thought, the one that rose unbidden from the dark, twisted pit of my soul, was, this one will be enough. I went back to the cabin and got the hunting rifle that had come with the rental, a dusty relic I hadn't even known was there. I told myself the same lie. It was a mercy. I couldn't let it suffer, but as I raised the rifle, my hand steady, my eye looking down the sight, I knew it was not about mercy. It was about me. It was about my need. The shot was deafening, a profane violation of the forest's sacred quiet. The deer fell, and as I stood over its magnificent dying body, watching the life drain from its dark liquid eyes, I felt nothing, no pity, no remorse, just the cold, clinical anticipation of the addict about to get his fix. I left the deer where it lay and ran to the clearing. The humming of the door was a triumphant, resonant thrum. I turned the knob. It swung open. The memory was perfect. It was our wedding day, the scent of the white roses in Eleanor's bouquet, the feeling of the cool gold ring on my finger, the sound of her voice as she said her vows, strong and clear and full of a love that I had believed was eternal. It was so real, so powerful, that I fell to my knees, sobbing, completely lost in the sensory perfection of the moment. When the door closed, and I was once again on my knees in the dirt and the cold, I knew, with a chilling, absolute certainty, what the door wanted next. The progression was logical, inevitable. It wanted a human life. It wanted me to become a monster. And the most terrifying part was that a part of me was considering it. The town of Black Creek was full of old, lonely people, people who might not be missed. The thought was a flash of pure demonic insanity, and I recoiled from it, horrified at the thing I was becoming. I was a man trapped in a feedback loop of grief and horror, and the only escape seemed to be to descend deeper. I decided to leave, to run. I packed my car in a frantic, paranoid haze, throwing my books and clothes into the back seat. I would drive west. I would never stop. I would put a continent between myself and that cursed clearing. I just had to visit it one last time. I had to say goodbye, not to the door, but to her. I walked through the woods, a man on his way to his own execution. I felt hollowed out, a husk. I stepped into the clearing. The door was waiting, and I knew, with the sudden soul-shattering clarity, what the final perfect sacrifice would have to be. Not a stranger, not an old man from town. Me, my own life, the ultimate offering, the final perfect death that would surely purchase the final perfect memory, not just a fleeting sensory echo, but the thing itself. An eternity with her, in that perfect, sun-drenched room beyond the door. It was a transaction, my miserable, grief-stricken life in exchange for an eternity of manufactured happiness. It seemed like a fair trade. I had the rifle with me. I had brought it to protect myself on the road. Another lie in a long, pathetic chain of them. I raised the barrel and placed it under my chin, my finger finding the cold, smooth curve of the trigger. My eyes were fixed on the door. I was ready. I was willing. "Don't, Tom." The voice was a whisper, a rustle of leaves, but it was her voice. It was Eleanor's voice. It had come not from the door, but from behind me. I lowered the rifle, my heart seizing in my chest, and turned. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the shadows of the ancient pines. It was not the vibrant, sun-kissed Eleanor of my memories. This was a pale, translucent echo of her form wavering like a heat haze, her eyes filled not with love, but with a profound, bottomless sorrow. "Eleanor?" I breathed. The name a prayer, a curse. "It's a trap, Tom," she whispered, her voice a fragile, distant thing. "It's not a memory. It's a cage. It feeds on life, but it traps the echo of a soul. Every time you open that door, you fed it, and you twisted my key in its lock." I stared at her, my mind refusing to comprehend. "What are you talking about? I was with you." "You were with a lure," she said, a single, translucent tear tracing a path down her spectral cheek. "A puppet made from your own memories and my stolen essence. It's a parasite, a lonely, ancient thing that has been here since the first tree fell in this forest. It promises comfort, but it only offers oblivion. It promises reunion, but it only creates prisoners. Your death would be the final lock on the door. It would give it both of us forever." The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. The beautiful, perfect memories were a lie, a bait. I had not been visiting my wife. I had been desecrating her memory, feeding her soul piece by piece to a monstrous, timeless entity. My grief had not been a key. It had been the hook on which I had been caught. The door behind me began to hum, a low, angry, possessive sound. It knew I was being swayed. The air grew cold. "What do I do?" I cried, looking from the ghost of my wife to the terrible, beautiful door. "Live," she whispered, her form beginning to fade. "Live for both of us, Tom, the real way, the hard way, and let me go." She was gone, I was alone in the clearing with a humming, hungry door, and for the first time in a year, I knew what I had to do. I was faced with a choice, a swift, easy death that would lead to an eternity in a beautiful, gilded cage, or a long, hard life filled with the real, painful, and ultimately cleansing fire of true grief. I chose the fire. I didn't run. I walked back to the cabin, my steps heavy but firm. I gathered the cans of gasoline I had for the generator and the axe from the woodshed. I returned to the clearing, a man with a purpose for the first time since Eleanor had died. I stood before the door, the source of all my monstrous actions, the altar of my twisted worship. I could feel its rage, its hunger. It was trying to lure me one last time, sending out the faint scent of cinnamon and old books. But it smelled like a lie now. It smelled like death. I swung the axe. The blade bit deep into the dark, polished wood, which screamed with a sound that was not wood, but a chorus of 1,000 trapped, tormented voices. I swung again and again, the wood splintering, a dark, viscous, sap-like substance bleeding from the wounds. I doused it in gasoline and threw a single lit match. The door erupted in a pillar of black, greasy smoke and an unnatural violet-colored flame. The screams from within it grew to a deafening crescendo, the voices of all its victims, all its prisoners, finally being released in a fiery, agonizing exorcism. I saw faces in the flames, fleeting, contorted masks of pain, and finally, of peace. And for a fraction of a second, I saw Eleanor, not the pale, sad echo from the woods, but the real Eleanor, her face full of light and love, her lips forming a single, silent word. Thank you. I stood there until the fire burned itself out, leaving nothing but a patch of scorched earth and a lingering foul smell that the clean forest air quickly carried away. The door was gone. The clearing was just clearing again. The silence was no longer a pressure. It was just silence. I left the cabin that day. I drove back to the city, back to the grid, back to the comforting, messy, and imperfect world of the living. The grief is still with me. It is a part of me now, a scar that will never fully fade. But it is a clean wound, not the festering, infected thing the door had made it. Sometimes, in my quiet moments, I remember the feel of the memories the door offered, their perfect, seductive beauty. And I understand that the greatest horrors are not the ones that threaten to kill us, but the ones that offer us a reason to stop living. I chose to live. I chose the pain. I chose the real, flawed, and beautiful memory of my wife, the one I carry inside me, the one that no locked door can ever contain or ever take away. That brings this story to a close. Let's carry on to the next one. I installed a baby monitor. It keeps showing a man standing behind me. If you're listening to this, do not buy the Angel Care 360 smart monitor. Do not buy any monitor that connects to the Wi-Fi. Do not invite that kind of seeing into your home. I know how that sounds. I sound like one of those conspiracy theorists in the comments section, ranting about 5G and surveillance states. 2 weeks ago, I was a normal guy. I was a junior architect. I was a husband to Sarah and a father to a 6-month-old boy named Dylan. Now, I am sitting in a motel room 3 towns over, with a chair jammed under the doorknob, writing this on a laptop that has its camera lens covered with 3 layers of duct tape. It started with the sleep regression. That's the technical term the pediatrician used. Dylan had been sleeping through the night, a miracle for which we were endlessly grateful. And then suddenly, He wasn't. He would scream. Not a hunger cry, not a wet diaper cry. It was a terror scream. It was the sound of a human being, however small, realizing they are in mortal danger. Sarah was falling apart. I was falling apart. We were hallucinations level tired. We had an old audio monitor, a cheap plastic thing that hissed like a nest of snakes, but Sarah said it wasn't enough. She needed to see him. She needed to know he wasn't choking or caught in the bars or whatever nightmares haunt a new mother's brain at 3 a.m. So I bought the Angel Care 360. It was expensive. It had night vision, motion tracking, temperature alerts, and two-way audio. It linked to an app on our phone so we could check in from work or the grocery store. I installed it on the high shelf in the corner of the nursery overlooking the crib. The view was panoramic. The resolution was crystal clear, even in pitch blackness. The first 3 nights were uneventful. We stared at the screen like zombies, watching the green-tinted rise and fall of Dylan's chest, hypnotized by the peace of it. On Thursday, I was working late in my home office downstairs. It was around 11 p.m. Sarah had gone to bed early. I had the app open on my iPad, propped up next to my monitor, keeping one eye on the blueprints I was reviewing and one eye on the kid. The office was quiet, just the hum of the hard drive and the settling of the house boards. I glanced at the iPad. Dylan was asleep. But the camera was moving. The Angel Care 360 has a feature where it tracks motion. If the baby rolls over, the lens pans to follow him. But Dylan was stone still. The camera, however, was slowly, mechanically panning to the left. It moved away from the crib. It moved past the changing table. It stopped on the rocking chair in the far corner of the room. The chair was empty. It was just a wooden rocker with a knitted afghan thrown over the back. But the camera stayed there. The little green autofocus square popped up on the screen, locking onto the empty chair. It pulsed, in and out, focusing. I tapped the screen to manually move the camera back to the crib. It wouldn't respond. The app flashed a message. Subject tracking active. Piece of junk, I muttered. I force-closed the app and reopened it. When the feed reloaded, the camera was facing the crib again. Dylan was fine. I chalked it up to a software bug. I'm a rational guy. Machines glitch. Sensors pick up dust motes. 2 nights later, I woke up to use the bathroom. I checked my phone out of habit. The feed loaded. The camera was panning again. It wasn't looking at the crib. It was looking at the door to the nursery. The door was closed. The camera zoomed in, actually zoomed. The digital motors whirring silently upstairs on the door handle. I watched, freezing in my bed, waiting for the handle to turn. I don't know why I was scared. I should have assumed it was Sarah checking on him, but Sarah was asleep next to me, her breathing heavy and rhythmic. The handle didn't move, but the camera held that focus for a solid minute before snapping back to the crib. The next morning, I checked the event logs. The app records motion events. There was a thumbnail for 2:14 a.m. I played the clip. In the video, the camera pans to the door. It zooms in. And then, just for a fraction of a second, maybe 3 frames of video, there is a distortion right in front of the door. The pixels garbled like bad reception, but the shape of the distortion wasn't random. It was vertical, tall. I showed Sarah. "It's just the Wi-Fi lagging," she said, though she looked uneasy. "Mark, don't obsess over it, as long as he's safe." But I couldn't let it go. I started watching the feed constantly. The turning point was Tuesday. I had come home early. Sarah was out with her sister. I put Dylan down for his nap and went to the kitchen to make a sandwich. I put my phone on the counter, the feed open. I was spreading mayonnaise when I saw it. On the screen, the nursery door opened. I dropped the knife. I hadn't heard the door open upstairs. I hadn't heard footsteps. I stared at the phone. The door swung inward slowly, and then a man walked into the room. He was tall, impossibly tall. He had to duck his head to get under the doorframe, and our doorframes are standard 6'8". He was wearing a suit that looked too big for him, the fabric hanging loosely off his shoulders. It was a dark charcoal color. He walked with a strange, gliding gait, his knees not seemingly bending enough. He walked right up to the crib. My heart was hammering so hard, my vision blurred. I grabbed the steak knife from the counter and sprinted for the stairs. "Get away from him!" I roared, bounding up the steps 2 at a time. I burst into the nursery, knife raised, ready to kill. The room was empty. The door was closed. I stood there, panting, the adrenaline turning sour in my blood. I looked at the crib. Dylan was sleeping soundly. I spun around, checking the closet, checking under the daybed. Nothing. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I looked at the screen. The feed was live. It showed me standing in the middle of the room, holding a knife, looking insane. But the door, in the video feed, the door was open. I looked at the real door. It was shut. I looked at the screen. Open. I walked over to the door and touched it. Solid wood, latched. I looked at the phone. On the screen, my digital avatar was reaching out and touching thin air, because on the screen, the door was wide open. And then I saw him. On the phone screen, standing in the dark hallway just beyond the open door, was the man. He was standing there just outside the threshold, watching me. I spun around to look at the hallway in real life. I ripped the door open. Empty hallway. Sunlight streaming in from the window at the end. Dust motes dancing. No 7-foot man in a suit. I looked back at the phone. On the screen, the hallway was dark, like it was nighttime. And the man was still there. He hadn't moved. He was looking at the camera. He was looking at me through the camera. His face, God, his face. It was blurred, not digitally pixelated, but smeared, like someone had painted a portrait of a face in oil paints and then dragged a thumb violently across the features before they dried. Where the eyes should have been, there were just deep, bruised indentations. I grabbed Dylan. I didn't care that I woke him up. I didn't care that he started screaming. I grabbed him, and I ran out of the house. I sat on the front lawn in the bright afternoon sun, clutching my son, waiting for Sarah to come home. I told her everything. I showed her the recording on the phone. She watched it. She saw me run in with the knife. She saw me staring at the door. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling, "the door is closed in the video." "What?" I snatched the phone back. I played it again. In the recording, she was right. In the playback, the door was closed. I looked like a lunatic screaming at a closed door. The man wasn't there. The dark hallway wasn't there. But I saw it. I screamed. I saw it live. "You need to sleep," Sarah said. She looked terrified of me. "You're having a breakdown." She made me take a sleeping pill. She made me sleep in the guest room. She kept Dylan in our room with the door locked. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, questioning my sanity. Maybe she was right. The stress, the lack of sleep, the brain breaks eventually. I decided to prove it to myself. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. Yesterday morning, Sarah took Dylan to the park. I stayed behind. I went into the nursery. I took the camera down from the shelf. I brought it downstairs to the living room. I set the camera on the mantelpiece, facing the sofa. I sat on the sofa. I opened the app on my phone. I wanted to test the sensor. I wanted to see if I could trigger the glitch. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at myself on the delay. I waved. The me on the screen waved a split second later. I made faces. Everything was normal. I felt a wave of relief. It was me. It was just exhaustion. I was about to close the app when the temperature sensor on the screen started dropping. The room temp was 72 degrees. The display in the corner of the app ticked down. 68, 60, 55, 48. I didn't feel cold. The living room was warm. Then the motion tracking box appeared, a green square. It didn't appear on me. It appeared in the air directly behind the sofa, behind my head. I watched the screen. The pixels behind my head started to darken. A shadow was forming. It wasn't casting on the wall. It was manifesting in the air. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the image on the phone. The shadow coalesced. It formed the suit. The slumped, narrow shoulders. The long, gray neck. The man was standing behind the sofa. He was bending down. I watched on the screen as his smeared, featureless face lowered until it was inches from my right ear. I held my breath. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for a touch, a breath, something. There was nothing physically there. But on the phone audio, I had the volume up. I heard a sound. It was wet, a slow, rasping inhalation, like someone trying to breathe through a throat full of mud. Craw! I opened my eyes and looked at the screen. The man had moved. He wasn't by my ear anymore. He was looking at the camera. He raised a hand. His fingers were impossibly long, with too many joints. He pointed at the ceiling. Then he looked up at the ceiling. I knew what was directly above the living room, the nursery. I ran. I didn't verify. I didn't turn around. I grabbed my keys and I ran out the door. I called Sarah and told her to go to her mother's. I told her not to come home. I told her I found mold, gas leak, whatever lie she would believe. I checked into this motel. I've been watching the feed. I shouldn't, but I can't stop. I left the camera on the mantelpiece in the living room. For hours, nothing happened. Just the empty living room. But an hour ago, the camera moved. I didn't move it. It panned down. It fell off the mantelpiece, lens up. It showed the ceiling. Then I saw feet. Not shoe-clad feet. Bare feet. Pale gray, emaciated feet walking across the living room ceiling, walking upside down, defying gravity, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. And then a face dropped into the frame. It hung from the ceiling, swinging slightly. It was the man. But this time, the smear was gone. He has eyes now. They are small and bright and human. They are my son's eyes. He looked into the lens, and he spoke. It came through the tiny speaker on my phone, tinny and distorted, but clear enough. He said, "Daddy." But it wasn't Dylan's voice. It was a voice that sounded like grinding stones. "Daddy, come home. We are waiting." I shut the laptop. I threw the phone in the toilet, but I can still hear it. I can hear the scratching in the walls of this motel room. I can hear the wet breathing under the door. Technology doesn't create ghosts. It just allows us to see what was always standing behind us. I have to go now. The light bulb just popped. And in the dark, the blue light of the smoke detector is blinking. It's blinking in a pattern. Look, behind you.